talk to you all just about some of the requirements of Leap-In and some of the expectations that we have. Basically, what I really want to talk to you all about is the Creative Assistant Program and the Financial Assistant Program, as well as Kim's offer for free consultations and Jill's offer for that 15% off. And my kind of soapbox stand for you all today is that these are all programs for you while you are in Leap-In. And we do understand that you are busy and that these things all are something else for you to consider. But it's also important for you to know that as of July 22nd, all of these opportunities are gone. So as such, your creative assistants, they are there to assist you, but if you do not give them what they need, they cannot assist you. And for that reason, you need to have a signed returned scoping document to Stephanie by 1 week from right now. So by 1/13 next Tuesday, you need to have a signed scoping document submitted. And if you do not, we will be assuming that you are passing on this program. So you will not be able to access that afterwards. Steph, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and you don't have to send it directly to me. If you're, you can send it right back to your creative assistants. They're kind of keeping in contact with us. But if you want to double check to make sure that we've got the documents, you can always just send a quick little, hey, did you receive my document? I signed it last night. That's a good way to check in as well.
Yeah, and we hope that you will take advantage of these opportunities. But as I've talked with a couple of you about, opportunities are just that. They are opportunity for you to be able to connect and to do something, but they are not requirements. So if this is too much for you right now, then it's too much for you right now, and that's great. I saw your question in the chat there, Brittany. If you have had some trouble getting a hold of them, just please CC me on the email and I will track them down.
I'll send out a message to your creative assistants as well, just to prompt them to get in touch.
Yeah. And that goes as well for your work with Ryan, who's our financial assistant. Again, signed scoping documents to Ryan by next Tuesday, or we're going to, at that point, say that you are not interested in taking care of those services. These students that are working on these projects are on a contract that ends on July 22nd. So if you give them something to do on July 21st, it will not get done. They need to have all of their deliverables submitted. Otherwise, the program that they have, they will not be paid through. Rachel.
Just a quick question. I can't remember exactly now, but I think I got a scoping document from the students that I sent back, but I don't know if I got one from Ryan. Is it the same one?
So Ryan's using different documentation. I think he's got his own set of documents, so it might look a little bit different. He might not be requiring your signature for that. So I can check in with Ryan just to see if there's anybody outstanding, and I'll follow up with any individuals that, I mean, he let me know that he's connected with most of you. There's only a couple that he's just scheduling some.
Yeah, I chatted with him. I just can't remember if I got a document, but I'll double check my email too.
Yeah, it'll probably look a little bit different, and he might just be taking care of that on his end and then going to send it out to everybody. So you all have that for your things, but I will double check with Ryan in case he's doing something different.
Okay, thank you.
Rachel, and I saw Cecilia as well. If you've had an initial meeting with Ryan, that's fine. All right, Tracy, you had your hand up and put it down. Did you still have a question?
It was the same comment. I was just wondering if I was supposed to get a document because I haven't yet.
Perfect. That was my mistake. Yeah, so signed documents for your creative assistants and an initial meeting with Ryan. Again, those will be done by next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Otherwise, you will be foregoing this service. Now, that also includes being responsive to them. So you can't sign the document and then not give them anything until July 18th. That's also not going to work. If you don't know what you want, then Dave or Jenny or I are very happy to meet with you to help figure it out, what you might be asking for. Or if you don't feel like you're there yet, again, just because it's an opportunity does not mean you need to do it. But again, I'm asking for some kindness and some respect of these people's time. They are not being paid much to help you. This is an experience building opportunity for them. And if you are being bad clients, you are going to give them a bad experience. And I would hate for that to be on any of your business's reputation or ours. Am I clear there? Okay, so scoping documents will be submitted by next Tuesday. Otherwise, you will forego the service. Same thing goes with your work with Kim and your work with Jill. If you are interested in those services, those are, again, they are not mandatory. They are there for you, but those offers do expire on July 22nd. So if you do want to take advantage of that, please do reach out. We know it's a lot, but it's like being a student. These programs are only available while you're in the program. Otherwise, you're welcome to reach out, but you likely won't be getting any discounted services. All right. I understand that you all have a lot on your plate. I know we talked about this a lot last week, that it gets heavy, and it's quite all right to pass on these opportunities, but please just be respectful if you are going to pass, and let them know that they can't just be waiting for you to get back to them. Your prompt response is needed in all cases, okay? All right. All right, thank you everyone. With that, we will go back to telling fun stories about fireworks and dogs and such, and you will meet my brother this week, and you can see that he in fact has not been blasted away by a firework, so that will be excellent news for everyone involved. I will turn it over to Dave, who I think is going to introduce our video of me introducing our video. But before we do, any questions? Rachel, is your hand still up, or is that another one?
Actually, I do have a question that I was going to save for the end, but I remember I have to sneak out a little bit early because I have a dentist appointment. Dave was talking last week about the Shopify thing, and now I'm a bit conflicted. And just clarify for me, if I go through the program with Shop Here, I would have to sign up for a store, and therefore I would not get the offer that is potentially on the table from Leap with the 1 year free of Shopify. So I was just wondering if you had any information about that, because I need to get.
Right. So with the Shop Here program, you would be then activating a store, but like you only get a limited time with it being free with that program. The bonus there is you get someone to actually at least get the bones of it up for you and actually build it. Our program, we won't be doing any constructing. You'll have to, you're kind of in charge of that yourself. But then you'll receive the platform for 1 year free. So it's kind of a,
and I've been for a lot of stuff before I've been able to start working on my website, but that program, as far as I know, is still ending by the end of the month. So at most, I'm probably going to get to meet with this girl one time. So I'm wondering if it's even worth that, or if I should hold out. And
so Brittany just raised a point that she doesn't know if you actually have to launch. I have no idea. You'd actually have to talk to them. You'd also have to find out, like, how does that make me eligible for one or the other in that regard? So it's a good question to ask. Yes, Kelsey?
Correct me if I'm wrong. The program that we're running, my thought was that it was only for current students.
Right. You need to have a current.
Rachel, you should do Shop Here.
Yes.
Okay.
So at the moment it is just for current students.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Thank you.
So any of you that are grads, we might get there, but the program as it exists right now is for students who will be active in a full course load in the fall.
That is
right now.
That is like not our prerequisite. That's Shopify's prerequisite, that they have to be able to put your student number in and get feedback from the college that states that you are currently enrolled.
Okay.
They are working on changing it, but they haven't told us when that is going to change.
That helps me make my decision. Thank you.
Ashley?
Question. Oh, so
Ashley, then Abby. Go ahead, Ashley.
Okay. And I assume more information is coming, Dave, because you keep saying that, but do we have to activate the Shopify website by a certain date, or do we have to no? Okay.
No, you can work on it in practice mode for as long as you want, like throughout the duration. So it's just once you activate it as a launched account, that's when it starts the timer, as far as what I was told.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
But again, Ashley, you'd have to launch it while still a current student. So you can't work on it for the next year while you're in school and then launch it when you're a grad.
Yeah, no, it's definitely on my plate to get going sooner rather than later. And so I have more than a year, or I guess just less than a year before that current student would no longer be valid. So that's
I'm just waiting for the activation links from their team. They have to be created in order for them to give us kind of a space.
Okay.
So once I have more information, you guys will be the first ones to know.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Abby.
My question was basically the same thing. I was just concerned about the timeline, but then if it's based on when we're a student, that's cool. Thank you.
No problem.
Excellent.
Any other questions? No? Alrighty. Okay, so let's kick the day off then today. So we are going to get started first with a lecture from Matthew Thomas, as I mentioned. Now, Matthew, I'm not going to show the recording of his intro. I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit about him. And if you want to get in touch with him, Twitter and LinkedIn is the best way to get in touch with him. Both are on FOL for you. And I also recommend you do. He's a great person to network with, especially if you're doing anything that's around tourism in any capacity. But he's kind of made a name for himself creating tourism experiences and digital strategies. He founded a couple different organizations. One was called City Proper, where he worked with cities and destinations to amplify kind of their unique characteristics and create digital products that scale their presence internationally as communities. He has a community for kind of destination marketers, tourism professionals, designers, and planners who are focused on creating cities of the future. So he has an online community that's focused at communicating around that. So that's something you're interested in, reach out regarding that as well. And he's also, I don't know if this is still active, but last year he had created a digital platform called Whereabouts for the tourism sector, which is really cool. And he also has founded his own business, which at one point was called Shoreline, and then turned into an experiential tourism company that oversees a transit program called BenBus. BenBus has been on hold for obviously since the pandemic, but now that is coming to an end, I know that it is still active and will be servicing at least 5 different communities in Southern Ontario that basically take you from different communities and bring you out to the beach. And that's what he's going to be talking about a lot in this presentation is about BenBus and kind of the experience of how he used PR to help really make that business known. So that is a little bit about Matthew, and let me just share my screen as we head into this. Kelsey, I will see you a bit later then. Enjoy your lunch. Okay. And there she is again. There we go.
On some schooling. He had me do this.
Oh my goodness.
How did I do that?
That was perfect. That was really well done.
So Matt's going to lead us through the next hour of talking about some PR and communications. So without further ado, Matt, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thanks for having me. Okay, so hopefully everybody can hear me. I thought today I would I'd talk a little bit about kind of my entrepreneurial journey. I never thought I'd be an entrepreneur. That was never the plan, and now that's very much what I'm doing now. And that's been kind of maybe 5 years in the making. And although I've been involved in a few different businesses, and Kelsey outlined some of those, I wanted to go deep into one, which is BenBus, and talk a little bit about, how that started, but more importantly, how I kind of launched it with pretty much no advertising budget and managed to get a lot of press, free publicity, lots of media attention, which really kind of carried it for the past few years. So with BenBus, I don't know if you're familiar with it, and I'll get more throughout the presentation, but it's a business that the whole plan was to ramp up this summer even more. So it started 2 summers ago, and this summer I was going to really ramp it up and expand it to brand new locations, but the pandemic happened. And so it isn't totally financially feasible to do it in a social distance way. So that's a little bit on the back burner. Maybe we'll be doing some trips this season, but there are bigger plans for when everything opens up and we're allowed to be a little bit in closer proximity to start running the trips again. But I still think it's a really great case point in how to how to get lots of media attention. So what I do is, I guess the flow of this is I'll talk a tiny bit about myself in the journey, how I ended up starting a couple businesses, and then talking about how to market and promote them. And hopefully you can take away some real practical tips on how to get a lot of publicity for your business and for when you launch your next big activity around your business. And then I'll just take questions. I think we'll get a lot out of that. I hope you can hear me. The jackhammering has begun again, but I think we'll be okay. So let me share my screen. Take a look at some stuff. Okay. So I would encourage you to, if you want to check out my website, that's it there, matthardythomas.com. I'm on social media all over the place too. But maybe just a little bit about me, because I've had a kind of circuitous path through all of, through life so far. And I studied, after jumping around in my undergrad and trying out a lot of things, I ended up with a double degree in history and psychology at the University of Ottawa. And what's funny is I was actually in a band in Ottawa, and one of the members of that band is actually in a really famous band. You may have heard of them, called the Arcade Fire. But I didn't get even close to that type of success. Instead, one of my band members told me, Matt, you're okay at guitar, but what you're really good at is getting people out to our shows and getting us on the radio. And he said, that's called marketing and public relations. Maybe you should go do that. So so I broke up with the band and went and studied at Fanshawe College, public relations. From there, as Kelsey said, I worked at Museum London and I had a few positions there, ended up as marketing manager and got a few other certificates. I'm currently completing my master's degree right now. I had a stint for a year and a half at Fanshawe College as the digital strategist, and I've volunteered a lot. So this is all to say that that's kind of a smorgasbord of kind of activities that when you just look at it like that, it's like, what does this guy kind of do? It's hard to say specifically exactly what I do. And so I came across a term. Oh, let's look at some stuff. So here's me when I started a business in a nonprofit called London Fuse, where we created a lot of online content, a lot of videos. That's me. That's a young looking Matt Thomas interviewing some people on a kind of a live stream video. That London Fuse was a side project that I started that was really successful. And so other communities hired me and a couple other guys to do it in other communities. So in Kitchener, Cambridge, Waterloo, we kind of replicated what we did in London and launched Grand Social, which was an online platform and content for creative people and industries. And then we did it in a few different neighborhoods also, or neighborhoods and cities also, which led me to my current consulting business, which is City Proper. And let's look at City Proper. City Proper is it's consulting where I work with cities and tourism organizations to help better define what they're doing to help improve tourism overall. So they need a new tourism strategy. I come and do public consultation with them, do marketing workshops with them, and help them better define, create strategies and understand what they're doing in terms of tourism. I was doing that so much, I was actually doing all these independent cities all over the place. I was doing these kind of workshops that I realized it's much better for me to actually create one product than to go to all these communities and do the same thing everywhere. So instead of being in the kind of consulting game, I'm moving more into a digital product, so software as a service. And so that's called Whereabouts. And I'm currently working on that right now. And Whereabouts is an all-in-one platform for destination marketers. And it's really niche, but we're building a platform so that different cities can help people plan what to do in their area, book through this platform, and then understand the data. And so that's what I'm working on a lot these days. You can brand your destination. Tourists can find local treasures. They have access to data, and it keeps more money in the community. So that's really early stages of that. And this is a sneak peek. I understand James Kingsley was talking to you guys last week. He helped me with some branding. So it'll look more like this. It will have its own brand. It's called Whereabouts. But it currently only has 3 followers. So I'm kind of keeping that on the down low. But that's what I'm working on now. But what I want to talk to you about is a business that I launched 2 years ago. And I think you'll get a lot out of this presentation because it's going to be very practical. And with that, I really solved a very simple problem, which I read through your bios, and it seems like a lot of you are also doing this in your businesses, which is, I don't know, can people reply back? Who's been to Grand Bend Beach before? Has everybody been there? Anybody not been to Grand Bend? If you go to Grand Bend, I couldn't believe how beautiful it was when I moved to London. It's an hour away, and it feels like the ocean. It's beautiful water. It's amazing sand. But the problem is the parking is a huge pain in the ass. And so here's a really great example of all the type of reviews you'll see about Grand Bend online, which is it's a great beach, but the parking's terrible. And so this person says that they waited around for 25 minutes to try to find parking at the beach, and it ended up costing them $20 to park. And that was the same experience I had. I moved here. I was like, what do I do? I used to kayak a lot. And I said, where's the water around here? I found Grand Bend and thought this is incredible. But the problem was I had a few beers and I couldn't drive home. And so I was like, I just wish there was a bus. And I also had this frustration with, 25 trying to find parking all day and having to pay for parking, which was really annoying. So I thought, somebody just needs to make some transportation out here and it will solve a lot of people's problems. And so I thought about that for a long time before acting on it, and it turned out to be a problem that really needs to be solved. So if you look online, there's hundreds of reviews of Grand Bend Beach like this. So I launched Bend Bus 2 summers ago with the simple idea of just getting people I thought if I could get people from London to Grand Bend, that would scratch my own itch, that would solve that problem. And so I charged the same price as it costs to park at Grand Bend for the day. I charged for a 2-way trip, or like a 2-way trip from London to Grand Bend and back. I thought we would do this a few times. I think I set out originally to do it 4 times over the summer. The first 2 filled up. So then I did it 8 times. And then I did it every single weekend through the summer. And so the 2 summers ago, I was literally at the beach every single Saturday and Sunday through the whole year. And so that's way too much time to spend at Grand Bend, but it was a lot of fun. And so I started that, and it was pretty successful, and ended up expanding it to other cities. So we started doing Kitchener and Guelph to Grand Bend and back, which was really fun. And then last summer we started doing London to Port Stanley and back. And so I had plans to even go further than that this summer and expand this. And what the plan was to create a business umbrella, which was called Shoreline. And so Shoreline would be multiple trips, not just to Grand Bend or Port Stanley. And it'd be transportation to both from London to Grand Bend and Kitchener to Grand Bend and Port Stanley, but also brand new markets. And so I did some research, and I can talk to you a little bit more about how I found out that it would, how I did some consumer research. But I was also going to expand this summer to Hamilton. So it was going to be Hamilton to Port Dover and Toronto to Wasaga Beach. And there's still a real big need for that to exist. And that will be the plan for next summer, as long as everything goes according to plan. But let's talk a little bit about Bend Bus and how I launched that with essentially 0 resources, because it was a side hustle. I never wanted it to be, I never meant for it to be anything more than a side hustle. So if you haven't had a chance to look at Bend Bus, I know some people here are familiar with it, but the idea was to go to the city, from the city to the beach and back. I say here, I think it should be fun, easy, and affordable to get to Grand Bend Beach. Why take the bus? It costs less than parking. So the parking it's now a little bit over $20 in Grand Bend, and so I try to keep it the price competitive to that. The journey is as good as the destination. So not only do we provide transportation to and from the beach, but I hire a lot of students to hop on the bus and animate it and make it a really fun and enjoyable trip. And so that was part of the appeal early on, which is I'd hop on the trip, and I had giveaways from different restaurants, and so I would give away T-shirts, and I would have trivia, and I would make the hour-long trip really fun and engaging. And a fair amount of people liked that, and so I started hiring beach bus attendants or beach bums, and they worked for me last summer and made the trips really, really fun. And you can relax and have a drink, so we'll take care of the transportation. And we only have 5-star reviews, which is so cool. And I told everybody who I hired last summer that if you're going to be a beach bum, you can only get 5-star reviews. I won't settle for anything less. And so we still maintain that, which is really cool. Lots of people are very happy with this service. Are there any questions before we dive in? I think it's kind of important that you know what Bend Bus is now, maybe before we kind of get into how I launched it. I can't see hands up or anything, so no? Okay. So really quickly, I don't know if you've come across this term, but Scott Adams is somebody online who's actually kind of problematic, but he has a really good idea, which is called the talent stack. Has anybody else talked about the talent stack at all? No? So everyone look into this, but then also ignore a lot of what Scott Adams has to say otherwise, because he's a problematic figure. But his idea of talent stack is really good. And so I know a lot of you already have ideas and already have your businesses up and running, but I think what's really important is to have some self-awareness about what skills you have to contribute to your company, to know then what areas you need other people to help fill in. And so I think the way Bend Bus was able to launch with almost no advertising dollars and a lot of public relations and earned media is because of some skills that I have developed. And I think you can develop those same skills too. And the idea of a talent stack is really simple. It's saying, instead of being the #1 person in any one category, so you could be the best public speaker in the world, or you could be the best at data analysis, or the best writer, or I don't know, name some other talents. Instead of trying to be the best at all those things, what you should do instead is create a stack of talents that, when put together, you're the only person in the world who does those things. And so, with me, a good way to look at it is, who are you among the top 25% of if you walk into any room? So just think about that. Like, if you're walking through the halls of Fanshawe, or if you go to meet up with a bunch of friends, if everyone in that room, if you could kind of understand what they're really good at in terms of a career, what are you not the best at, but among the top 25%? And so for me, like, I don't have an MBA, and I'm not like a genius at marketing, but I kind of know a bit about starting businesses. I'm really good at generating ideas. I'm not an amazing award-winning photographer by any means, but I've learned how to take some pretty good shots. Some people are really great at writing, like, eloquently. I can write pretty well, concisely. I enjoy public speaking. Some people are terrified of it. There are much better public speakers than me, but I think I'm among the better ones. And networking, I'm really good at developing networks. I'm not the best at any of those things, but when put together, there's few people who have that talent stack. And yours may look very different. Yours could be, you could cook, You can be a great chef and good at on video. Like already you're separated from many other people. You don't have to be the best cook. You don't have to be the best videographer. But when you put those things together, all of a sudden you're standing out. And so I think BenBus really came from that. It came from these unique experiences of wanting to be at the beach all the time, just love taking photos, love using the media to kind of get attention. Narcissistically, I kind of just love being in the news. It's kind of fun. And putting these things together helped me really kind of launch BenBus. And so I'd encourage you to take these skills that I'm talking about today and develop those, but then also see what comes naturally to you and then use those to your advantage. And don't beat yourself up about trying to be the best in any one category. Just put what you're pretty good at together. So let's talk about how to get tons of press. So when I talk about press, what I'm talking about is like with BenBus, I paid very, very little in advertising. Especially, I didn't pay anything in traditional advertising. I didn't do any billboards or I later did posters, which actually with digital ads kind of worked better. But what I mean is I got other people to write about BenBus and to get it all over the news and in newspapers and online and in blogs for free. And I don't know how much all this would cost if I had actually paid for it. I'm not sure how much a National Post article, if I did an ad the size of what the National Post article was, how much that would cost, but it would cost, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars, and I was able to get it for free. So here's how to do that. So first of all, don't think about advertising to begin with. Like if you're already thinking about buying, and I know Facebook really wants you to promote your posts, if you're relying on advertising, especially in the early times, you're kind of doing it wrong, I think. And so what you want to do is save your advertising dollars for conversion. So if you're trying to create awareness, and you know how Facebook, I don't know if you've set up Facebook advertisements yet, but if you do that, it gives you one of the options is to, do you want to create awareness with your post? Never pay for awareness. That's a really terrible idea. Because there are better ways to get awareness, and you want to save your money for conversion, which means once people are finally aware of you and are engaged and like your page and thought about buying tickets, then you use money to help finally convert them into a customer. That's what advertising is now, I think, is very good for. But for general awareness, there's much better ways. So don't think about spending money. It's better used way further down the line. And also when working with the media, like it's just a simple fact that I could talk to you right now, and I kind of have, about how dope BenBus is and how it's just the best way to get to the beach, and why would you ever drive? That seems so silly. And I can talk to you about that, and you will probably not believe me because you have no idea who I am and you don't trust me. But if you can get a third party, if you can get your favorite blog or CBC London to talk about how this is actually pretty good business, or if you can get one of your friends to share that information, then people are far more likely to believe it. So don't pay to push information to people and say, hey, my business is actually really great. My business is really great, and really and put that in people's faces. Early on, you want to introduce it through third parties so that it becomes far more believable. So here's an article that came out that was from the early work with BenBus. And just as an example here, this particular post was shared 536 times. It had tons of comments, lots of likes, and I'm not sure how much that would cost. It would cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars, but I had it done completely free. So here's how you kind of do that. What you do is you really want to start thinking about a really great story to tell. Part of what I'm about to tell you is real Slytherin stuff. This is Slytherin right here, but I had to do it. So here's a tweet that I came up with, and it says, business idea, beach bus from London to Grand Bend every Saturday during the summer. Someone do this or I will. Okay. So here's the thing. Don't tell anyone, okay? But that's not a real tweet. That's not a real tweet. I did tweet that, but it's like long gone in my Twitter history. So what I did is I kind of photoshopped that. I thought about it. That's definitely what I thought about at the time. And I did tweet something like that, but then I kind of photoshopped that together. That's a real Slytherin move. But I was definitely thinking it. And so that's the story I wanted to tell, which was literally when I first moved to the city, I wanted to start this company. And I told all my friends for years, I was like, hey, shouldn't there be a bus from London to Grand Bend and back? And everyone said, there really should be. And I would say, can you do that? Like, can you just start that? And they would say, nope, I don't want to do it. And so 2 years ago, I said, fine. Like literally after like 6 years of saying this, I was like, fine, I will do this myself. But when I wanted to tell the story, I kind of needed a proof of, no one kind of believed that I would just, that, you know, all my friends said, yeah, you have been talking about that for at least 5 years. So I made this tweet. And that was kind of the genesis of this whole story. That story that I told you where I showed up, I was a newbie here. I thought this existed. Everyone else thought this should, or I thought this should exist. Everyone else thought this should exist. And no one did it. And I just said, fine, I'll do it, is the hook of this whole thing. And it's what's led to kind of, a good story has led to some really successful outcomes here. So to do this, not only do you need a new story, so if you have a really great story, it has to be a good story from like other people's perspective. So that's kind of like, it shouldn't be super self-fulfilling. It should be newsworthy. And so what does the news like? Well, they like something new and novel. Has to be news, new and novel. They love conflict. They love human interest stories. So, and you can see this all over the media. Like if there's ever a hurricane, what photo is more impactful? If there's a hurricane and it wipes out a large city and it's really sad, what's a more impactful story to tell? How all these buildings were destroyed and it was hundreds of millions of dollars of property damage? Or if you showed maybe like a kid weeping, you know, outside of a broken building, that's a more compelling story. So you want to bring a human interest to any sort of news that you're bringing. So how it helps a person, tell that story of that person. And then the secret sauce here is to do everything that a journalist does. And so it's sometimes funny because when you get in the news, sometimes you write a media release and you give the journalists all this information, tons of information, and you do all of their work for them. And then they copy and paste what you wrote, and then they put it online. And then you say, I wonder what you get paid to do, because I did all the work and now you did it. And now, like, I think that's your day job. But that's amazing. That's what you want. If you can literally get a journalist to copy and paste what you've sent them and put that online, then it's almost like it's telling your story to a much bigger audience. So you need to think about all the roles that a journalist, all the things that a journalist thinks about, and provide for all of their needs. And it will be very likely that they will help promote you. I don't know if anybody here studied like media or anything like that, but when I would, at one point in my life, I really thought like journalists were like biased one way or the other. I'm like, oh, this media organization they're biased because they're liberal, or this one's conservative. And then when you start talking to them and figuring out what their life is actually like, you realize that maybe at a macro level, they kind of are biased in one way or another, but the reality is that they're really busy. They're all really busy and under-resourced. And they all want to get their kids to soccer practice after, at 5 o'clock, and they're struggling to meet deadlines. So if you can just help them in every single way to get a story done at the end of the day, then they've done their job and you're happy because your work's out there. So here's what you have to think about. You have to think about creating a really great story, writing that story the exact same way that they would write it. You have to supply them with pictures or multimedia, which is very important, and provide them with quotes. If you look at any sort of BuzzFeed or anything from BuzzFeed to CBC to CTV, they all have quotes from the person behind the story. And you don't have to wait for them to ask you those questions. You can literally just create quotes about what you're doing, like just create quotes and then say exactly what you want to say and put that into the media release. And so you're really just doing their job for them. You're helping them out in every way. And so here's an example of the media release that I put together for Bend Bus, written in a way that is exactly the way most media want the information. Telling that story, do something, create an event, create some sort of spectacle, some sort of giveaway that creates news, and then package it and deliver it to journalists, and it will get attention. Take all the photos for the journalists. So this I realized is like very important, which is you can, for years I sent media releases without images, and that was just so silly because the image is probably the most important, especially because of social media attention getter. So if you're not great at photography yet, just get good. I'm like, okay, so here's what I did. These are all the people I hired as beach bums. They were hired to go on the bus, and they rotated schedules so that they went on the bus each. There's one of them on each trip, and they created that engaging experience. And I brought them all to the beach in Port Stanley on a Saturday in May, and I just crossed my fingers and hoped that it would be sunny. And we had the bus company park a bus on the beach for us, and he just left it there for the day, and we did a photo shoot. And so these are just like a couple of them are friends, and they were all just, the rest were students who we hired. And we hung out for 2 hours, and I took tons of photos of them on the bus, and then we did some other kind of development work, professional development work in the afternoon. And it was kind of a cold day. I don't know if you can tell, some of these people are actually kind of cold, but I edited it to make it look super sunny. And so this was so important to getting media. Having these, and this is an okay photo. It looks like everybody's having fun. That's a nice one. Look at that. It looks like almost like driving there. If the door wasn't open, it looks like they were flying around. So that's a pretty good one. And I just took all of these on. There's us inside the bus, and I took these on. If anybody knows about photography, you can, if you have a new iPhone, you can take as good of photos of these. I use like this super old Canon 5D. I think it's 12 years old. It's like a really old full frame camera. That's what I took these on. So they look professional, but like an iPhone probably would come close to this. And there's a lot of editing. And what you're thinking about is, I just need photos for content throughout the whole summer, but also what's the picture that the media will want to use that tells the story of what I'm talking about. And I think it came down, it was this photo, because this photo was used everywhere. And so there it is there on a post about CTV News. There it is there, the National Post wrote about us and used that image. I don't know how many views this got, but hundreds of thousands, or thousands of views. And so with photography, you don't have to be great. I'm not a great photographer. What the secret is, take a boatload of photos, take tons of photos, use a pretty good camera, and just try to get that photogenic shot that tells the story of what you're doing. And then what I did is I just put them all into a folder. I literally just dumped all the photos into a Google Drive. And I said, hey, journalists in the media release, choose any one of these photos. I don't care, whatever one you like. Here's a whole bunch of photos I took that day. And they all chose this one. here, but what you're doing is making their job easy, right? So now they can choose whatever photo they want from the shoot. I open that up as a Google folder, and that anybody could have access to it. While this loads, are there any questions so far? No?
Anybody?
I guess I have a question.
What's up?
Like, say you were to host a charity event, how do you get the press around that? Like, does it have to be a specific event? Like, is there is there something, yeah, like what makes a good event to get the press?
Yeah, so you need a hook. So I'm not sure what the charity event is helping. What are you trying to do? What are you supporting?
Okay, so I like my company is like doing like unique styles and prints, like dog collars, dog leashes, like also dog apparel, like in the future. So our company gives back like a portion of our profits to donate towards like organizations that help animals in need. So I was thinking maybe like a dog washing event, or like something where like you collaborate with someone and you're doing like some sort of like thing where people can buy tickets and then the proceeds go towards the charity. Because I know people do like car wash for charity. You could do dog wash, you know?
Yeah.
It could be fun.
So yeah, I think you're onto something. And so for me, I think what you want to do is I mean, you're not going to get a better photo than you or someone else holding a puppy. Like that's just cute. Like that's just great. People will love that. So if you could, as much in advance of the event as you can get to show tell the story of a family who adopted a dog that was in need, or what, really bring it to the people, right? So the people and the dogs are the dogs pets, showing them as much as possible before the event. So the event's further away, but a few weeks down the line, if you could tell a story about how this helped or benefited someone who always wanted a puppy and finally had one, and your support. And so just in terms of like, find that story, find that hook, maybe we can workshop it a little bit after the whole presentation, and then arrange a photo shoot. Puppies, man, that's so amazing. I'm sure all businesses wish they had puppies. Like who else? There's somebody on here who's doing welding. Like that's tougher for a photo shoot.
Yeah,
but maybe not.
I'm not going to get anything as cute as puppies in mine.
We'll talk about it. We can figure something out for you too. So just make it really easy for them, and don't waste your time on expensive equipment. It doesn't photography equipment. It doesn't need to be. I learned everything I learned in a few YouTube videos.
That's awesome. That's good to know. Yeah, because I was actually thinking about getting a DSLR camera versus using my Google Pixel, and I'm like, it's supposedly one of the best smartphone cameras, so I might as well learn how to use it. Yeah,
no, for sure. Like if you have a phone within the past 2 years, people 10 years ago would have died for that technology. So you're gonna get really. I don't use this at all anymore. For that photo shoot I use this, and it is a great camera, but you don't need it at all. So don't be too concerned about that. Be more concerned about what you're taking a picture of. And for me, it was like getting that bus at the beach was really important.
Okay.
Even if it was just us hanging out at the beach, that wasn't nearly as good of a shot as the sand with the bus and the people. Like that just together to me seemed like, okay, that's going to solve the problem, right? That's what they wished they could do, but they are time constrained. So I don't know what you're doing, but do imagine whatever shot you want the journalist to have. Like if they had all day to arrange a photo shoot, what would they want? And do that shot, or do hundreds of shots, and then let them choose the best one.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, let's talk about how to work with their schedule though, because this is really interesting because journalists have a deadline every day. Every day they have to get some. If they're like BuzzFeed or something, they have probably 4 articles they have to publish a day. And if they're more traditional broadcasts, they need to file a story every single day. And so you have to be very prepared to work around their schedule. So when they ask for something, you want to have it ready for them so that you'll get the story. So this is kind of stuff.
Actually, one thing I'd like to butt in, I noticed, like for example, TMZ, they've got like hundreds of, videographers running around the city trying to find something. Just so that they have consistent content.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, they're hungry. They're hungry for that stuff. And so, I mean, you see people. It's really like how clever you can get about this. Like I think what I did was kind of clever, but one of the best examples I ever heard of was, and we don't have the resources of IKEA, but if you know the furniture company IKEA, when they were launching a new store in Toronto, they sure they could have done billboards and newspaper ads and television spots to say IKEA is now in the city, but what they did instead was they took all of their furniture, like a lot of their new furniture. You know how they have showcases in their building and you get trapped inside IKEA and you can't find your way out? And so they took all that furniture and put it in the subways in Toronto. So when you got off at Queen Station, when you got out, you walked into an IKEA furniture showroom. And what was really great, so that's kind of clever, right? It's like kind of, wow, bringing the showroom to the people. But they got like 5 steps further in the inception here, where they then put on the price tag of each item, it said free, please take me. And then they tipped off TMZ and they tipped off all the content creators and said, hey, there's gonna be something really interesting at Queen Station tomorrow morning when all the commuters come in. You might want to take a look. All these content people show up, and to see kind of mayhem. They see people getting off of the subway to see a brand new couch that says "Take me, I'm free," and then you see like strangers trying to put, trying to carry up a couch up the stairs, and people running away with lamps and stuff. And it's like the type of media that you couldn't pay for, millions of dollars, but they found a clever way to make it fun and social and engaging. And so, really think about that stuff and make it really easy for people to take your content and tell a story, because they're all hungry for it. But be ready to work on their schedule. So here's a picture of this. Stopped working. Here's a picture of me, and so I'm wearing my work clothes. And so if I had time, I would have dressed up and like I was at the beach, but they called me with 2 hours notice and they said, hey, we love the Ben Bus story. We want to put it on the news tonight. We want to put it on CTV News tonight at 6 o'clock. But we need you to provide an interview. Are you free? And so I was like, I guess I am. Like, I'm gonna make my schedule so that I can make this work. And so to the right is a video segment of me. It was a 2-minute segment about the Ben Bus. And so thankfully I was able to provide an interview so that I could say it in my own words, but I had to drop everything and arrange my entire schedule. And when you work, and you guys are entrepreneurs, so you probably have this flexibility, but when I worked for other organizations, we didn't have that flexibility, where the media would call and say, we love this story or we're interested in this story that you sent us. Can we get an interview today at 4 o'clock? And I would say to the person who that story was about, I'd say, hey, are you free at 4? And they say, nope, I can't. And so we wouldn't get any coverage. So what you want to do is, if you're asking the media to write about you, be very prepared to work around their crazy schedule. He had to take this, I'm not sure what time I met him. I think I met him at 3 or 4 o'clock, and he had to turn that around for a news segment within 2 hours. So it was really important to meet them and so that could be anything. If they say, we want to send a photographer over at 11 a.m., say, yep, that's great, right? You don't want to leave them hanging. They're really important to this process. So the next tip, work with their schedule, but network. So this is like the best thing I've ever seen. This was on the comment section of one of the when we announced Bend Bus. This was the CTV or CBC article underneath in the comments section. And you can see here, there's 492 people liked it. There's tons of comments. And one person wrote, here it is. So he wrote, "I think this is a great idea, but who does this guy know at the CBC to get so much coverage? They talked about it on the radio all morning," which is like, I don't know if you like, that's just such a compliment to me. So, because it's true. I networked, and I know the people in the media, and they know that I'm a reliable source to help them out do their job. And so when I send them information, they know that it's coming from, they know Matthew Thomas, and that it's not going to be probably like a garbage story. So this is to say that I think you should do that too. If you have friends who work in the media, if you have friends who work at different organizations, you have friends who run blogs, like work with them first, like talk to them and become that reliable person. Because sure, I could have just sent the media release to CBC, but the fact that, yeah, I did know them, and they kind of like think I'm an okay person. So that definitely helped get the coverage. All morning they talked about it apparently, which is a nice thing to hear. Okay, moving on. Next tip is leverage people wanting to see themselves. So after you kind of launch, here's like the most important tip to free publicity all the time, which is take pictures of people because people love seeing themselves. It's that simple. So with Bend Bus, I showed up. Like I said, I spent most of the weekends in Grand Bend, and so what I did is I walked around. I hung out with people who took the bus, and I just took their photos. And people love, and then I would post these on social media, and they would tag themselves. So it's like we've become a very visual society. So whatever you're doing, make it visual. And so here's some people who took the bus. Here's one of the kids who was on the bus. Here's these people didn't take the bus, but they were doing something cool, so I took a photo of it. These kids weren't on the bus, but I asked their parents because they looked cool, and I was like, "Hey, can I take a picture of these kids? They look cool. I'll send you a copy." And they're like, "Are you a weirdo?" And I said, "Nope." And so here's a couple who took the bus. Here's another couple who took the bus. So it's just like, you just want to get this information out there. And like, these photos are not amazing, but it's incredible how well they did. And you slap a summer filter on there. Like these photos, I just made it look like real summery and kind of overexposed and like it's been bleached or something. And it does really, really well. Some more people. And so you want to feed the content machine. You want to help journalists as much as possible, and you want to have content all the time. So photos are really important for that. It's a real skill to develop. More people, same family, have them flex. And then so finally get other people to do the marketing for you. And so this is the last tip that I have, which is something that worked so well. I couldn't believe how well it worked. Was I used this. So I gave all of my beach bums, beach attendants, in stacks, these like kind of Polaroids, and I had one, and everybody who took the bus got a Polaroid shot of themselves as soon as we got to the beach. That was just what we did. And what was so cool is those ended up all over the internet. Like people shared that. And so what we wanted to do was just say, let's help you remember this experience, but you know, we'll give you this. It'll be something we didn't even say we were going to do. It's just a nice surprise. And you're going to do all the promoting for us. And so everybody was in here. They tagged Bend Bus, and they liked seeing a photo of themselves. It ended up online. It was very successful little tactic. And so as much as you can think about, okay, help journalists do their entire job for them. Tell a great story, help journalists do their entire job, and then just help people, you know, in my case, have a great day, but also just empower them to tell your story for you. And this is a great and simple technique that worked really well. I'm not sure how much time we have left, but I just wanted to open it up to questions now, if if anybody has any.
Chat open. If you don't want to raise your hand. Okay. Let me pop you guys back here. I'm not going to let you guys go through those questions because they get really specific to that group, but I hope there was some things that you guys learned there. I think that was really helpful around just kind of understanding, you know, with a little bit of effort and a little bit of knowledge, you can definitely, you know, use a lot of the assets that you currently have in order to kind of get yourself ready to create buzz around your business, which all of you have a story worth telling, I think, personally. If you're not willing to do it, then I feel like you're just working too hard. You know, there's a lot of marketing that we're all going to have to do for our businesses, but this requires a little bit of effort up front. You know, you know, if you saw some of the numbers that Matthew was showing there from BenBus, what they were able to produce is all of that sharing and that free kind of earned media, that goes way further than a lot of your paid advertising might go. So please, you know, really consider using some of the tips you heard here to, you know, build up a press kit for yourself, because I think all of you could at least gain just a little buzz. Even if you get one customer from it, it's still worth it. Speaking of that, press kits, I definitely want to maybe give us a quick bathroom break or bio break, body break, before we let Stephanie take over, who is going to be talking about the specifics of like what, you know, Matthew introduced kind of like, these are all the assets that you would need that you can gather. And this is how you gather them, but like, what does that actually look like when you need to send it over to the media or get it ready for them? So let's take, what time do we have right now? 2:14. Let's take a quick 5 minutes. So we'll come back at 2:20 and Stephanie will be ready to take over. Cool. See you soon.
So, so I hope you guys all enjoyed Matt's presentation. I really found it very valuable and very interesting. I don't know if any of you are like me, but I know it was recording, but I was nodding along and I was really just loving it. So lots of great information there. What I'm going to really focus on with my presentation is how you as sort of small business owners and entrepreneurs can really you know, create your own press kits. It doesn't have to be something where you have to, you know, hire a PR firm to develop all these, you know, assets for you. It's something that you can do for yourself. And, you know, as business owners who, you know, wear a lot of hats, you guys are accountants, you guys are marketers, you guys are salespeople, you're really everything. So I really wanted to break down how you can create these things for yourself in a way that's easy and manageable and doesn't really add to your work too much, because I imagine that you're all feeling probably fairly overwhelmed at this point. So I am going to just share my screen. And I have a million windows open, so this will just take a quick second. Okay. And okay, can somebody just give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen? Oh, not read mode.
Looks good stuff.
Great. Sorry, I'm just going to put it into full screen mode. And then if there are any questions, you can throw them in the chat. I won't be monitoring the chat, but maybe Kelsey or Dave, you can just kind of let me know if there's anything that comes in. I'm happy to take questions throughout. You can save them for the end. Happy to do it however you guys want to do this. And I apologize if I'm shifting a little bit. You never know how uncomfortable all the chairs are in your house until you're sitting in them for 8 hours a day. So I apologize for that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about press kits. I know that Matt mentioned multiple times, you know, press kits and how to maybe some of the different components that you might see in a press kit, when you might use them. We're going to dive into these a little bit more because it's just another tool in your toolbox that you can use for your public relations purposes. So what we're going to cover today, sort of in a nutshell, is what is a press kit, what's typically in a press kit. This is going to be unique, like your businesses are unique, your press kits are going to be unique, but there are a few components that you might want to think about having, and after that you can sort of customize it so it makes sense for your business. I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference between a press release and a media advisory. Matt mentioned, you know, a few different instances of when you might want to be telling a story versus when you might want to be inviting press to an event. So we're going to talk about the differences and when you might want to use one versus the other as a business owner. I'm going to talk quickly about how you craft a press kit, how you put it together, how you bring all the elements in together in a way that's really easy for the press to connect with your business. How to connect with media. That can be something that's a little bit of a challenge. When you hear Matt talk, he's been networking and developing these connections for years. As a new business owner that maybe doesn't have those contacts in the press, how do you start reaching out? How do you connect with your media contacts? Who becomes the ambassador for your brand and your business? And sort of how to get started with that and how you might want to start thinking about that. Excuse me. And we're also going to do a little activity where you can maybe craft a bit of your own press release. I'm not going to ask you to sit here and sort of write out a complete, polished press release, but we can go through a few elements, think about what story you might want to highlight for your business and how you might pull that together. Because again, it's a lot easier than you might think seeing them out and about in the world. It can be very daunting and overwhelming to think I have to know how to put this together. And I'm not somebody who went to school for PR, but we can walk you through some very easy steps. And I know Dave has some I believe some resources for you on FOL, and I actually am going to use one of those resources to go through the activity. Is that stuff on FOL for them, Dave?
Not yet. I'm going to put it up there. I wasn't sure if you were going to use it, but yeah, it's ready to go. I just got to upload it.
Perfect. Yeah, so I'm using one of them, just the template from those resources, and hopefully that'll give you a good guide. Okay. So let's kind of dive right in. You hear the term press kit, you might hear media kit, media package. There's lots of different terms and oftentimes they're interchangeable. But essentially what a press kit is and what it does is it's a resource for media inquiries. So I know Matt talked about how the press might reach out and they want to write a story. You want to have a press kit that has everything packaged in an easy to consume, easily digestible, easily accessible manner for potential stories. Essentially, you don't want to give a journalist any reason to not publish a story about you because they can't find information, whether it's on your website, whether you're connecting with them directly. So it's really a resource for, not only yourself, but also for the media that you're trying to connect with. It is a one-stop shop for relevant business information. And sometimes we think very, we think sort of small when we're thinking about what a press kit is. Oh, it's just for media inquiries. I'm probably not going to really need one. I'm just starting my business. But a press kit can be used to send out to potential funders. It can be sent out to, friends and family who can promote your business on your behalf. It can be sent out to influencers. It can be sent out to, all sorts of different people or stakeholders that can help propel your business to the next level. And in fact, a lot of the information that goes into a press kit is stuff that you've already created for your business and it really should already be accessible to you as a small business owner. A lot of that information you either have in some format, and it's just about packaging it in a way that's really user-friendly for whoever your target audience is with your kit. So again, this enables others to promote your brand. You don't have to be the person that's, hitting the streets, pounding the pavement, always being the representative for your brand. You can enable people within your network, within your industry to help promote your brand as well. And giving them all the tools that they need to do that is sort of what a press kit can really accomplish. It also gives legitimacy to your business. I know when I go on to, different websites and I'm looking at different products that have been promoted to me, I typically like to check out their website. I like to check out their social media. But when I see a media page and, link here for, a press kit, for photos, for, relevant news stories about a business, I automatically assume that business is more legitimate than, say, a business that doesn't have any of those features. It really just shows that you're thinking about your business. You want to connect with media. And when media see that, it allows them to say, okay, this is somebody that wants to promote their business. We can connect with them and we can create that reciprocal relationship. We promote them and we also provide value to our end subscribers who are reading these stories and are interested in these news stories. And again, it's another tool to support your overall marketing strategy. So your marketing strategy is this huge sort of nebulous thing, and it contains a lot of components. You might have your communication strategy, you might have a social media strategy, you might have sort of sales tactics. You might have a sort of marketing strategy for specific elements of your business. Press kit is just another tool and another resource that you can use to push your brand forward, that you can use to market your business, and again, to add legitimacy to what you're doing in your ecosystem. So what does a press kit look like? I know I mentioned this at the beginning, but a press kit can be as individual as your business. There are some common elements that you'll see and things that you'll want to make sure that you have so that it's, so that it's a usable press kit for your target audience. But ultimately, once you have that base, you can really customize a press kit to support whatever you would like to tell about your story. So some of the things that you should really have in a press kit are, a biography or a one-page about us. This should include information about your company. Maybe it'll include some team information, maybe some frequently asked questions or facts or interesting tidbits about your company. When I talk about having all these elements already, these are probably things that you've been crafting throughout the Leap-In process. I know I've been in earlier sessions where you were coming up with sort of that 140 character, this is my business in a nutshell. That's something that would absolutely be included on your one pager or on, whether it's a PDF, whether it's a page on your website, whatever that is, or however that looks like for you. And we'll talk about those different formats throughout. But you're going to have this information, and it's just about packaging it again so that it's really clear and you hit on all the key highlights of your business that a journalist or somebody in the media might want to see and might want to use to tell your story. Oftentimes, a press kit will include a media release. Typically, when you're creating a press kit, it's because you have a story that you want to tell, and these are all the associated documents. That being said, if you don't have a story that you're trying to tell right away, it's still worthwhile to have the other elements of a press kit. It is still worthwhile to have sort of a one page on your website that goes over who you are, what your mission, vision, and values are, some information about your business in general. It's valuable to have that and have that in a way that's accessible so that when you do have news stories that come along, you can be responsive and say, hey, okay, I've written my press release. I want the news to pick up this story. And here's all the associated content that they're going to need to be able to do their jobs effectively. You will also want to include some sort of a brand package. This is something for a journalist or somebody that's promoting your brand where they can download your logo. They have sort of usage guidelines so they know how you want your logo to be used. You will find sometimes when you go to a company's website, they might have a media page and they have all of their logos available for download. And then they would also probably have a little associated document that says, our logo can only be used, if it's not scaled up or scaled down, if it's not cut off, it can only be used on a plain background. So you want to figure out what your brand is and really understand how you want people to interact with your visual identity so that you have some usage requirements around your stuff. This doesn't necessarily have to be something that anybody can access, but it should be available in some type of format that you have readily that you can send out or provide to people that are interested. You can also include, I know Matt talked a lot about photography, having those high quality photos that you can, drop in a Google Doc and have a link in your press kit so that, when somebody's trying to tell your story, they can go through, look at what's an approved photo and pick the one that really represents the story the best. And copy as well is really helpful. Again, when I verbally tell people about my business or when you're verbally speaking to people about your business, you might have a certain way of describing your business and they might hear it a certain way and interpret it differently. So having that consistent copy that somebody can take and say, hey, we're going to take this right from the business owner's mouth. These are their words. This is how they describe their business. They don't adulterate that information or change it in a way that's going to change the story that you're trying to tell. And this brand package is going to look different for different businesses. And there's going to be different components that you're going to want to make sure that are available, again, depending on what your visual aesthetic is, what your visual story is, and how you want people to interact with your brand. So press kit can be digital, and I would say that 99% of you should have a digital press kit. Actually, I'm going to say 100% of you should have a digital press kit, something that's easy to link, to add to an email, to upload to a website, to send out to anybody that might be interested in looking. But you can also have a physical press kit. I'm not going to say gone are the days when we go to events and we hand out physical copies of information, but you should still have something that you can put together for those types of events. I'm obviously not in the office, so I don't have access to maybe press kits that I put together before, but they can be really simple. They can be something as simple as, let's say, like a portfolio that has, your one page of company information. You could have some business cards where you want them to contact you. Maybe you have a publication. Let's say you're an apparel business and you want to include your lookbook for the season. There's lots of things that you can include in there. And when you want to have something tactile, it's because there's something that you want your audience to interact with. You might want to send them a product. You might be reaching out to a journalist and saying, hey, this is a new product we're launching. We're including a sample in it here. We want you to take a look at it and have it on hand. Again, it will look different for different purposes and for different businesses, but everybody should have some sort of an electronic press kit, and having a physical press kit can be really a good idea as well when the situation warrants. And this doesn't need to necessarily just go to journalists. I included some examples that might make sense for some of your brands. There might be influencers in your space that you want to connect with, and you want to send them out a product, you want to send them out information on your company, and you want them to write a story about you. You know, they love the product so much that they're going to potentially provide you some free media. That's not always the case, so you're going to have to navigate that a little bit. But maybe you have a product reviewer, or there's a blogger that works in your industry that you want to connect with. So really think broadly about who you might be trying to connect with, and what information you want to get into their hands. So in terms of your company information, I made a little note. This is something that you should have regardless. If you're still building your website, or if you're still kind of crafting your company identity, this might be something that's sort of in flux right now, but it's something that you're going to need to have regardless. Whether this is just a one-page PDF that goes over the highlights of your company, whether it's a web page. I've actually seen some really interesting businesses that have this in their Instagram stories. And you can have this information reflected across multiple platforms, but you also want to have it in a way that's easily accessible to send out to potential media contacts. So some of the information that you want to include here is about us. You know, when did you start your company? Why did you start your company? What is that high level overview where you want to talk about sort of what your value proposition in the space is? What makes your company different than other companies that are operating or providing similar services? So just like when you're crafting those high level overviews about your business, you want to replicate that into sort of a nice cohesive one pager or a web page or a slide. Again, the format can really be up to you, and it can be whatever you're comfortable with. We're not asking you to learn all these new software. We're not asking you to learn Adobe InDesign and know how to put these things together, but you can use free templates. There's lots of resources that are available, and you can just use what you have for the most part. Okay. So in terms of your branding package and what you might want to include in your branding package, as I mentioned, this is just a guide to your company's visual identity. What this is going to do is it's going to allow, you know, partners, collaborators, journalists, media outlets to understand your story, understand your visual identity, and stay consistent with that story when they're retelling it. Some of the things that you want to include in a brand package, and this can be something that's hosted again on your website through a downloadable link, or it's something that you have easily accessible for yourself that you can send out as needed. You of course want to have logos, and you want to have a variety of formats and colors. You know, I've seen brand packages that are quite extensive where they have, you know, there's no background, there is a background, there's white, there's black, there's horizontal, there's whatever. If you just have one logo, that's absolutely fine, but you might want to include some important usage information. So if, for example, if your logo has a white background, you don't necessarily probably want it going onto a really distracting colored background. It doesn't have to be so prescriptive. You don't want to make it a challenge to use your logo, but you want to make sure that when you see your logo out and about, whether it's on event posters, whether it's in the media, that it's being used in a way that's respectful of your brand. You also want to think about the different formats that you have. You know, do you have JPEGs? Do you have PNG files? Do you have vector files? If you're working with a graphic designer, or if you're working with a company to develop your logo, they're going to provide you a ton of different file formats that you can use. Hold on to those. I can't tell you the amount of times I've been collaborating with even a major company, and I've reached out and said, hey, can you send me your logo for this press release? Or can you send me your logo for, you know, this poster that we're putting together? And they send me a logo that looks like it's been photocopied 8 times. It's blurry. It's a weird JPEG with this weird background. And I'll ask them for their original file, and they'll say, oh, you know, I think we created that 5 years ago, and I think it was so-and-so's friend's brother, and I don't know that we have those files anymore. So they just have something that's been recycled over and over again. Keep your originals, keep them in a safe place, because it is important. You don't want a potential journalist or blogger to have to feel like they're going to find your logo on a website somewhere that's been used 8 times and is at, you know, 0 resolution or whatever. So do hold on to those things. It's something to think about in terms of your own asset management. Make sure you have those in a way that are easily accessible for yourself even. You can include the fonts and colors that you use in telling your story. I would say that's a little bit more pertinent probably for people within your organization or people that are ambassadors of your organization. It helps tell them, you know, this is the consistent font that we want things associated with our business to use. These are the colors that we want to use to promote your business, but it can be something that you include in your overall branding package as well for external audiences. Like I mentioned, you want to have sort of a general usage guide. You don't want this to be overly complex, but you know, if you don't want your logo to be scaled to past a certain size, that's important to have. People are typically fairly respectful of how you want your logo to be used, and they will interact with you if they have any questions. You can also include other visual assets. So these are things like maybe web banners. If you're going to be asking for somebody to promote you on YouTube, you'll want to make sure that you have a web banner that's crafted to those specs and is ready to go. Social media tiles, you know, this is something that you're going to develop. You're not going to start out with a brand package that hasn't all of these things, but start with that sort of easy piece. You know, have your logo ready to go, have a very basic usage guide, have some visual assets, you know, especially photography. I think Matt really did a good job of underscoring the importance of having high quality photography, and whether it's from your, you know, iPhone, whether you're somebody who's really a strong photographer, have lots of options, have things that you can easily provide to interested parties. And then the other thing you can also include in this branding package is your consistent copy. So again, if somebody wanted to, you know, write about your company, they could pull that content and they could almost, you know, verbatim use your words or, you know, rework it into their article, but again, staying consistent with your messaging. So this just really helps with consistency. You'll notice sometimes if you're looking at different companies, you might see them featured in 8 different spots and the messaging might be very, very different. And that can be really confusing to somebody who's trying to, you know, find out more about your company and wants to understand what you do. So the more you can be consistent with your information across platforms, the more you're going to tell a consistent story, the more you're going to build brand loyalty, and the more you're going to have people that want to connect with you to learn more. Okay, so a press release. You've probably heard this term a lot. You might have seen press releases. If you've, you know, been around different companies' websites and gone to their media section, you might even see sort of a whole deck of press releases. If you've never seen a press release before, it's not an overly complex document. It's simply a document that highlights a story that's important to your business. It can be sent out to various media outlets. And like I mentioned, think more broadly than media. It can be sent out to stakeholders, partners, collaborators. It can be sent out to, you know, pitch competitions. Maybe you need to supply some company information for, you know, funding proposals. Again, you can use a lot of the information in a complete press kit for a multitude of uses. But looking at a press release specifically, what you're trying to do is you want media to read your press release, say, wow, that's really interesting. I'm going to write a story using the information that's in this document, and we're going to publish it on, you know, London Free Press or CBC Ontario. Or I want to follow up with the company that developed this so that we can get an interview with them, and we want to have that interview on the 6 o'clock news, whatever it might be. So some of the things that you need to think about in terms of, you know, when do I need to have a press release? You want to think, is the story that you're telling newsworthy? And that means different things to different outlets. What's newsworthy to global news looks a lot different to what's newsworthy to, let's say, like Gardener's Weekly. So you're going to have to figure out what's newsworthy to the types of publications that you're trying to connect with. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you identify who those individuals are, who are going to be your ambassadors, who are going to want to pick up your story, who are going to be your key contacts in the media. But the first thing to understand is it newsworthy? You know, so for example, let's say I have a company and, you know, I had a wonderful launch and now I'm hiring one person. That's probably not super newsworthy, but let's say I had planned to expand by 10 people by 2022. That's something that has a little bit more pickup. That might be something that, you know, the London region is interested in hearing about because it shows growth and development. So it's all about finding your angle and understanding who is going to find that angle newsworthy. Some of the common elements that you're going to see in a press release, again, there's fairly specific templates for how to write these, and I'm going to drop one in the chat so that you can kind of see what that looks like and also maybe start crafting your own for your own business. But of course, you want to have a headline and a subheader. Your headline is really that catchy hook that Matt's talking about. It's something that the journalist is going to see across their desk and say, oh, okay, that's really interesting. I really want to kind of figure out what the rest of the story is and have more context and see if it merits a news story in my publication. You also want to have a subheader. That subheader is going to give a little bit more context for the news story and situate it within sort of some type of context, a contextual situation. You want to have an opening paragraph, again, providing more context, but your opening paragraph is really where you want to hit that why. That why is this important? Why is this newsworthy? Why am I going to pick it up? Why is my audience going to care? You want to make sure that you're hitting that within the first paragraph. And the reason being, journalists might get, hundreds or thousands of media releases in a day, and they're not necessarily going to sit there and go through each of them with a fine-tooth comb. You really want to make sure that you're not burying any important information, that's right up front and that's easy for them to access and see and to potentially action if they want to follow up. In the rest of your body, you want to make sure that you're covering sort of the 5 W's and the H. If you've written an essay at any point in your life, you'll be very familiar with these terminologies. You want to cover, that information that provides that context to the reader or to the journalist. So that's the who, what, where, why, when, and how. Again, some of that information will probably be hooked in the opening paragraph, but you want to make sure that you're covering all of those within the body of your press release. You can also include additional material. Things like quotes are fantastic to include. I would say they are a must-have within your press release. You want to include photos or a link to photos and testimonials potentially. There's lots of additional material that you can include. Maybe you want to have a couple of bullet points with some, interesting facts about the story that you're sending out or that you're hoping is getting picked up. You also want to have contact information. Now, this is sort of, I'm going to give you sort of two sides of the coin here. If you can set up a dedicated line for media inquiries for your business, that's wonderful. If it's media@yourbusinessname.com, that's fantastic. I think that can really lend a lot of legitimacy to what you're sending out. It can really help the journalist view your business as a more legitimate business. It can help you sort out between, sort of inquiries that come for your business versus inquiries that come from the media. That being said, you're probably not going to have, hundreds of media requests coming in a month. So if you do have a dedicated email folder or a dedicated email address for media inquiries or a dedicated channel, do make sure that you're checking it. Matt mentioned the fact that journalists will call you up and say, hey, do you have time at 6 p.m. tonight? We want to do an interview with you. If you're not checking that email address regularly, or if you don't have notifications set up, then I would say do not have a separate email for it. Know what your bandwidth is and do what makes sense for you. If you can't handle having that separate, inbox, then that's not going to work for your business. You're not going to be responsive and you're not going to be able to leverage all this free media. So you have to really think about what makes sense for your business. And you also want to include a company boilerplate. I don't know if they're called boilerplates anymore. I was doing some research. That was sort of the terminology that I used a lot when I was in school. But essentially what it is, it's that, 3 to 4 sentences about your company that, you read through the press release, which really goes into the story you're trying to tell. But then you want to have information about your company, at the end so that the audience is really clear on who you are. So I'm going to show you an example of a press release after this slide, but I just want to kind of go through how you can stand out. Like I mentioned, lots of news outlets will be inundated with press releases. They get them all the time and they have to, peruse through hundreds of different stories to find ones that make sense for them. So how do you stand out in a crowd? The first thing, of course, is ensure that your news is in fact newsworthy and really find your focus. I know I mentioned that newsworthy, that's sort of a relative term and it means different things to different organizations, but figure out what's newsworthy to the outlet that you're trying to target or the outlets that you're trying to target. I know that as a business owner, a lot of what you're doing is is a passion project. It's something you've been really excited about. You've done your research. So you might immediately know or think that it's newsworthy, but sometimes you have to think, okay, will an audience understand that? And sometimes that has to be included in the press release to provide that context so that they understand why it is newsworthy if it's not easily or readily apparent. Right from the perspective of the journalist or your audience, again, everything you do should really be tailored to your audience. If you're writing copy for, clients, that's going to look like one type of copy. If you're writing copy for vendors that you work with, that's going to look very different. If you're writing copy for journalists, again, it's all about tailoring your content to the audience that you're trying to connect with. What will they want to see? And again, like Matt said, how do you make this as easy as possible for them? If I'm a journalist and I get a press release and I think, okay, you know what, that says all the information that I need. It's already sort of positioned in a way that I can understand the value proposition to my readers or, my audience, then I'm just going to get started and start writing this out. If it has everything that I need, there's a chance that you could send out a press release, you don't hear anything, and then you see a news story about your organization the next day. So I can't tell you the amount of times I would, send out a press release. It goes sort of out into the ether, and then you get a notification that you're getting some media coverage because the journalist was able to get exactly what they needed and they ran with it that day, and it was responsive and got out there fairly quickly and had good pickup. The flip side of that being, they might call you back and say, this is really interesting and we want to set up an interview for you in half an hour and we're going to play it on CBC London tomorrow morning on the radio. So do be prepared for that type of follow-up. I know I've been caught sort of on my back foot when journalists have reached out and said, hey, we want to do an interview right now. Do you have time? And, I'm sitting there thinking, I don't necessarily have my remarks planned. I didn't necessarily plan to have this call right now, but do be prepared as much as possible to have that follow-up piece. So of course, you want to ensure that your supporting documents or press kit are easily accessible and can be sent out or accessed as needed. Again, this is all about packaging information in a way that's really easy for your target audience to not only consume, but to get to. You're not asking them to jump through hoops if you want them to write a story about you. Of course, you want to have a catchy title. It should be both informative and highlighting the newsworthiness of your story. You want to have something that hooks the reader in right away so that they want to actually, read through and potentially write a story about your business. Include any social media channels. If you want the journalist or if you want their subsequent audience to connect with you, include that information. Have a call to action potentially within your press release. For more information, please connect with us. Media at whatever, or your Twitter, your Instagram, or your website. If you have that information in a press release, you can absolutely drive traffic to your sites and your various channels for communication. And if you have facts and figures about your business, use them. Sometimes it's easier to see that context when we see a number or we see information packaged in a way that we can easily understand. So let's say you were writing a press release, you've had tremendous growth. You want to talk about, our sales have been up, 200% over the past year, and now we're looking to set up a secondary location in London. That provides a lot of context for the reader, and again, it can promote your business to that next level. And sort of the last thing that I say here is KISS. I don't know if you guys have heard the KISS principle, but of course, this is not meant to offend anybody, but keep it simple. It's great advice, hurts every time, but really do simplify it. A press release is not really the avenue for you to do a creative writing exercise where you're using flowery language and you're, turning phrases and using prose that you wouldn't typically use. This is just to impart information so it's easily accessible to your audience, and again, not providing some of that what we might call fluff. I'm somebody who sometimes loves to throw fluff in, so it's always an exercise in restraint when I'm writing a press release not to make it fluffy. So just sort of giving that really pertinent information. These documents are only, a press release should only really be 1 to 2 pages, so it's not like you are sitting down to write a whole essay on your business. You're really just trying to get to the what's the expression, the meat and potatoes of your business and the news story that you're trying to tell. Okay, So I wanted to touch on a little bit about press releases versus media advisories and when you would use one versus the other. So we've kind of gone over a press release, and I hope you're getting a bit more of a sense of what a press release is. But essentially, it's telling a story to the media. It should have all the information that a journalist needs to take that story and run with it. Like I said, they might not even contact you for any reason, and you might see a story show up the next day that talks about your business. So this is a tool that helps a journalist or a social media influencer or a blogger, somebody that's going to talk about your business. It helps them tell the story, again, like whether it's an article, a story, a blog post, or a social media post. When you would want to use a press release. You want to use a press release when you're telling new or novel information about your business. You want to highlight major achievements. These can be things like getting funded, maybe growth. Again, are you looking to increase? Are you opening a new facility? Are you launching new initiatives? Maybe you have a campaign around social justice that you want to highlight and center for your business. Those are absolutely things that you could include in a press release. And again, thinking about the topic and the focus of your press release, it's really going to, again, different audiences are going to consider different initiatives or different stories newsworthy. So it's important to really know who you're targeting. And of course, events. So let's say you have an event, maybe it's an award ceremony and it was wonderful, and you really want to send out a press release that highlights the winners of your company awards and who was there, who attended, that type of thing. So when would you use a media advisory? So in Matt's presentation, I believe, so one of the previous cohort clients had mentioned that they wanted to have a charity event and they wanted media to show up. So that is when you would use a media advisory. It's simply advising the media that there is going to be something happening that you would like them to attend. So this can be, special events. It could be a press conference where you're going to make an announcement and you want media to attend. It could be an award ceremony. I said special announcements already, so I'm getting a little bit repetitive, but essentially you're advising the media so they know the information and they can either be there or they can pass that information along to their audience so their audiences can be there as well or can tune in to whatever special presentation is happening. These do not necessarily have to be in-person events. Typically they are, but now that we're in sort of this very online and digital world, you can invite the media to your digital events. You can let them know what's going on. You might even get more pickup now that you're able to host things in a virtual world because there's less travel. Somebody can kind of pop in fairly easily. It opens a lot of doors for connecting with media in a way that you might not have been able to before. So those are the differences. And you might even sometimes you hear them used interchangeably, but they really do have separate functions. So you have to think about what you're trying to accomplish and which one of these documents might make the most sense. And of course, a media advisory, you want to make sure that that's going out ahead of your event. Typically, you want to make sure that you're sending it out maybe a week ahead or 2 weeks ahead, and then sending a reminder in a couple of days. It's going to have very basic information. It's really just, what the event is, when it is, and that call to action that you want the media to arrive. So does anybody have any questions about the differences about this and when you might want to use one versus the other? I don't think so. Okay, I'll keep going. And if you have any questions, you can pop it in the chat or unmute your mic. Okay. So one of the things I kind of wanted to go over is this sort of sad idea. What if my press release isn't picked up? That can be really disappointing, especially when you think you have a story that people are going to love. It's going to hit that human interest note, and you're really excited about it, and it doesn't get picked up. So what do? Of course, you want to consistently be evaluating all of your marketing strategies. I know that this has been discussed sort of ad nauseum, but if you're going to employ a tactic, you want to evaluate if that tactic is working. If you are spending 100 hours writing press releases and putting together these really beautiful press kits and you're not getting any media, you need to start thinking, okay, is this worth my time? Let's look at what I'm doing. What can I be doing better? And make sure that you're maximizing your impact, because being the business owner, you have to do a million things and you don't have time to sink in into efforts that are not being successful for you. So some of the things that I would get you to think about if you're finding you're not having a tremendous amount of pickup from the stories that you're putting out there. Is your news newsworthy? Again, we keep going back to that, but I can't tell you how important it is. Even at an institution like Fanshawe, where we have amazing news stories coming all the time, when we work with the marketing department, the first thing they ask us, they're like, okay, but why? Why is this different? What is newsworthy about this? We're not gonna work with you on crafting this press release unless you can tell us why this is important and why your audiences will be interested. That being said, you're the expert in your business, so you might just need to figure out how to explain that or how to capture that information in a way that makes it obvious. It might not be that the news isn't newsworthy. It could be that you're not packaging it in a way that makes sense, or is a little bit maybe confusing to your end audience. So that brings me into sort of the second question that you might want to ask yourself. Are you targeting the correct audience with your information? Are you, reaching out to the Globe and Mail about something sort of very specific about your business that maybe only relates to being a business in London? Maybe that's not the right connection that you're trying to make. So again, understanding who your audience is for the information. Some, I'm going to say bad PR people will spam out information. They will send out a press release to everybody and just sort of throw as much at the wall as possible and see what sticks. That's not a really good tactic, and it's not a good use of your time, and it's not going to create those relationships with the press and those contacts that are going to help propel your business forward in the future. And again, are you using the appropriate communication channel to connect with your audience? So, maybe you're trying to connect with a journalist over LinkedIn and you're not hearing anything back. Maybe you want to try something else. Maybe you want to find an email address. Maybe you want to leverage your networks. Figuring out maybe what you're sending out is not reaching that person because you're sending it to the wrong channel, essentially. And the last thing I want to say is don't take it personally. One of the things that was said to me by media outlets is when we were sometimes sending out press releases is, oh, well, if it's a slow news day, then we'll put it up. And, that's kind of like a knife right to the heart, because, I think the news is really interesting. I think it's something that everyone will be really excited to hear about. And then to hear that, okay, well, we'll maybe consider it if it's a very slow news day. That's just sort of the nature of the beast, and you can't take it personally. It'll happen. That being said, if it is a slow news day, that could be wonderful for you. You might get some great traction. There might be lots of, it might be an opportunity that you wouldn't necessarily get. So don't take it personally if it doesn't get picked up. Just try to ask yourself some questions, recalibrate, and continue to refine your strategy so you can be successful moving forward. Okay, so how to create a press kit. So I know we've talked about sort of the individual components. Now I want to talk about how we put it all together and how we package it and sort of what that process can look like. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to identify what that format is going to be that you're going to use. You can have a press kit in sort of multiple formats, but again, it's really going to depend on the communication channels that you're using. Is it easy to, just email out a downloadable link? Is it easier to, direct people to a web page where everything is easily accessible? Is it better to have it, on a USB that you're handing out at an event? These are all different sort of formats that you can capture this information on. And you might want to have it in multiple different formats for different audiences or different events. So again, I've given just some examples, but you should always have an e-version. I would imagine that you really can't have a print version without an e-version, but do make sure that if you are creating specifically for the purpose of print, you're saving all those files and you're packaging them, and that can essentially be your e-version. The first thing you want to do, and again, this is something that you should do regardless of whether you're putting together a press kit, but craft your company information page. Craft that one pager that gives the, about you, that gives your mission, your vision, your team, interesting information. Why did you come up with your business? What gap did you see? Really identifying what separates you in that space, but also what makes you interesting as a business. And you can include personal information. This is a way for your audience to connect with you. And as a business owner, you're so wrapped up in the identity of your business. Talk about yourself, let them know something about you. You can include, by the numbers, we sell this many let's say dog apparel items, and we do this, like just interesting facts that you think are going to grab the attention of anybody really, but specifically for those audiences that you're hoping to connect with. And it's also a really good idea to have related news stories. So if you start to get picked up by the media, have that information collected on your webpage in some manner. Have a link to all those news stories. Have a dedicated media section. You can host this on your social media pages. You can host this on your website, and you can also include this in a PDF or a PowerPoint, slide document. Just try to meet yourself where you're comfortable. Like I said, you're not going to have to learn this new software to put this together. You don't have to be a graphic designer. You can use free templates. One of the examples that I included at the top is not one that I'm personally familiar with, but I know that Leap has recommended it a few times, and I know it's a really easy to use software. But Canva, that might be a fairly easy software to use to put all these pieces together to have that cohesive document that you can send out. So after you've created that sort of one-page collection of information about your company information, you want to start thinking about your brand package. And again, this can be very simple if you don't have a lot of these assets yet, but you of course want to make sure that you have your logos, banners, art, photography, testimonials, quotes. You'll include some of these items in a press release, but you want to have these things readily available, even if you're not sending them out at that particular time. The press release is something that you would craft and then attach your press kit to and send out to journalists so that they can write your story, or you direct them to your press kit so that if they do want to pick up your story, they know exactly where to get the information. So then you want to, if you're going to create a press release, if you have a story to tell, then you want to develop a press release. The first thing that you want to do is obviously identify the focus and purpose of your press release. Are you sending out a press release to let people know what's going on with your business? Are you trying to connect with more potential clients? Do you have this great campaign that you're running and you want people to interact with your campaign? Try to figure out what that looks like for your business. I would imagine that for a lot of you, your first press release might be that your business is launching. And for some of you, it might be that your business is relaunching or rebranding if you've already been active in your space. So that could really be that first press release that you kind of get started with is, I'm a new business launching in London. And, what's the focus? What's the focus? Is it that, you're coming out of a entrepreneurial incubator space and you're leveraging that into being a business operating in London? Again, what's your value proposition that you want to make readily apparent in your press release? And then what you want to do is you want to package all of these things in your chosen format. So, if you want to write everything in a Word document and then copy and paste it over into something else, that's fine. You can craft your copy however you're comfortable. But essentially, you want to make sure that once it's all complete, it's all in one place, it's easy to get, and a best practice that seems to be what most companies do is including an easy to download link on your website. If you don't want to do that, if you don't necessarily want anybody coming to your website to have access to all of this information, that's absolutely fine as well. You'll just have to remember that when you're sending out press releases to journalists, that you're attaching that or you're linking it within your email or linking it however you're reaching out to them, because they will need to have access to that. And they might not necessarily reach out to you and say, hey, we loved your story. It was fantastic. Can you send us all this information? Like I said, if they're going through, hundreds of press releases in a day, they might just want to look for the one that has everything that they need, or, go through that email that has exactly everything they need to write their story so they can meet those crazy deadlines. So something to think about. Does anybody have any questions yet? Nope. Okay. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about your media contacts, because I think that can be really daunting if you don't have those connections, and that's okay. Most people don't have those connections going in, and this is sort of how you start thinking about who your media contacts are. And I believe my next slide has some a little how-to connect with those media contacts. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to figure out who those contacts are, and you can segment out your outlets by sort of the types of news that you want to tell. So if you want to tell a story that pertains to being a business in London, Ontario, for example, you might want to look at some of the regional or the local outlets, you know, maybe London Inc. or The Londoner or London Free Press. Again, these are just a couple of examples off the top of my head. If you are trying to push a news story that really has to do with your industry and your service offerings, and maybe you're in sort of a really niche area, so you want to start finding out what are those reputable blogs that people go to for information about your industry. What are those industry publications that you know, people reference or that you might read? What are those weekly journals or periodicals? Who are those I don't want to say like tastemakers, but who are those people that speak to potentially your end clients or your end audience for your message? So the first thing you really need to do is figure out who those outlets or potentially people are. You know, and the best way to do that is try to find stories that are similar to the story that you're trying to tell. You know, who's telling that story? Is there a particular journalist from the London Free Press that is always covering, you know, human interest stories? Or is there a particular journalist with London Inc. that really focuses on startup businesses? So find out who those people are. You will oftentimes see their name as a little tagline. They typically have a byline, and you can find those individuals. Sometimes you can find their email, you can find their LinkedIn, sometimes you can find their social media. Oftentimes publications might have a dedicated sort of for inquiries, you know, stories, or, you know, to submit a press release, click here. So you're going to have a lot of different channels that you might have to navigate. But what you want to start thinking about is collecting all this information for yourself. Now, it's going to be a fluid document. It could be an Excel file. It could be a Word document. Again, you don't have to create something totally novel and new, but getting that information so that when you have something, a news story to tell, you know exactly who it's going to, and you don't have to search for that information. So see where your competitors are getting pick up in the news. See who's writing stories about them. Do your research to see who's telling the stories that you want to tell as well. So how do you connect with the media if you really don't have any connection with them whatsoever? So I've got a few strategies, and it's not necessarily a simple, like, this is the entry point and this is what you do and this is how you'll connect with a journalist. But there's a few different tactics that you can try that are going to help enable you be successful long-term. So the first one is obviously cold emailing or calling. I would say 90% of the time you should be emailing. Most people don't love to, you know, pick up the phone and have a story pitched at them over the phone. So predominantly, if you're going to be reaching out with no connection whatsoever to a journalist or to somebody who you would like to pick up your story, emailing is probably the way to go. That way you can link all the pertinent information as well. If you don't have email addresses for specific individuals, you can try LinkedIn. You can try a variety of different platforms to try and get in contact with them. It's not always going to yield a positive result, but it's a good way to start putting some feelers out there and see what you get back. The second thing that you can do is really interact with media outlets and journalists on social media. You will see that most journalists, most publications have Twitter pages, they have social media, they're putting out stories, and they interact with people. You know, they're responding to comments, they're responding to readers. Connect with them that way. You know, send them private messages or tag them in a post. You know, if you're putting something up on your social media that you think a particular journalist, because that's their beat, is going to be really excited about, tag them in it or send them a private message. You know, that's sometimes you have to go to the spaces where your audience are, and oftentimes journalists and, you know, anybody that's in the media is on social media, because that's where a lot of us get our news these days. Also, you should attend events where media will be present. If they're in person and you see the media there, go try to talk to them. If, you know, it's a business event and you're attending, maybe they'll want to interview you. Why are you at this event? And you can really use that as an opportunity to create a relationship or even plug your business in that moment. If it's, you know, I think the online events, it's a little bit more of a challenge, but there still might be opportunities. So go where media are going to be, attend those events, connect with those figures. You really need to keep that relationship alive once you connect. So if somebody writes a story about your business, follow up and say, oh, thank you so much. I read the story. What wonderful coverage. Keep that relationship alive. Don't only connect with journalists when you have something that you want them to publish. Try to grow your network so there are people that you can contact sort of, you know, out of the blue when you have something interesting to tell them, even if it's not necessarily a, you know, a media release or a story per se. Always thank somebody who writes a story about you. Always thank media that come out to events that you're putting on. Again, it just creates that reciprocal relationship. You can send samples, products, or swag when appropriate. Obviously, not a lot of people are in their offices right now, but when people start to head back to the office, if you have a new product line out that you want to send to somebody, send it to them and then include your press package and say, hey, this is a new product. I'd love for you to check it out. And if you like it, here's some, sample tweets, or here's some sample news stories that you could write about my product. So this is sort of, you want to be careful, because that's sort of where you might be sort of pushing yourself into, I'm not going to say paid, because it's not, you're providing sort of a free product. You're not paying the reviewer necessarily, or in this case, you shouldn't be. But it's sort of that relationship. I'm sending you something because I want you to give me your honest feedback on it. That being said, you might want to connect with them to make sure that they are actually positive with their experience with whatever you sent them, and they want to write something positive about potentially your product or service offering. Leverage your network. You guys are all in a wonderful cohort, and some of you might have some connections in the media. Some of you might say, oh yeah, I actually know a writer at the London Free Press, or I know somebody that works at Global News or CBC. Connect with each other, try to leverage networks, leverage your networks within your family, within your friends, within your coworkers, within your business. You never know who has a contact somewhere. And that's something that, could be surprising, that, so-and-so's new cousin is a writer at wherever, and you can get that contact information. They might be able to introduce you to their editor, and you might be able to get a featured story in a publication. And keep an updated contact list that is curated by the audience. So like I said, whether that's an Excel sheet, whether it's a Word document, whether it's something that you just keep in your Outlook, doesn't really matter. Just make sure that you have that information so you can follow up. And keeping in contact regularly is really important, for the express reason that if a journalist moves to another publication, or if they leave their job, if you're in semi-regular contact with them, they're going to pass your name along to, whoever's taking over their portfolio. They're going to say, hey, I'm actually leaving, but here's, Joe Smith, who's now the new writer for the local business section of the London Free Press. Please follow up with Joe for any future media inquiries. That way you don't have to start rebuilding these relationships from step one. Okay. So I wanted to do just a little bit of an activity with you to get you thinking about who might be those key contacts in the media for you guys. So what I want you to think about is, who might be interested in different aspects of your business? So who would be interested in your company launch? Who would be interested in if you were doing a rebrand? Who would be interested in if you were growing and there were new opportunities that you were bringing to the region? Who would be interested in new products and services? What about new initiatives like a social justice campaign, partnerships, collaborations, events? If you want to just take a couple of minutes, and you can write these down on a piece of paper, or if you want to type them out, but think about some of the stories that your business might like to tell, or that you're thinking might be in the pipeline for your business, and who might be some of those key contacts that you would want to connect with. Is it an industry publication? Is it, a Musicians Monthly, whatever it might be. So take a couple of minutes, and then I'll actually ask if a few of you can share your answers at a very high level, just sort of what the story is and who you might want to connect with. So I'm just going to stop the share for a quick sec. Okay. And if you have any questions, you can ask them. Does anybody have a story that they're sort of thinking about their business? Is it, just that we're launching, or that you're hitting a milestone? Are there any major announcements that you could think of? And you can throw it in the chat as well.
So, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ebony.
Yeah. So I've done a lot of work before, and so I've had a lot of different stories done. It was mostly around, again, that advocacy piece when it comes to Black issues and stuff. So being able to reach out to those contacts and now be like, oh, I've now created my business around this, because before it was, oh, look what this this individual is doing in the community. Oh, look at this event, or, here's what she had to say at this event. But now it's like I'm launching my business that specifically has to do with a resource that now I have a targeted customer and all of that, and opportunities to be of use, especially right now. Anti-Black racism and diversity inclusion is huge. So being able to like position myself in that's kind of what I'm working towards.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think you've done a really good job of positioning it, talking about, this is sort of historically what my, business efforts or what I was doing with my advocacy. And this is how we're translating all of that advocacy into this new business idea or this reimagined business idea. So I think that's absolutely something that would be, definitely newsworthy to lots of specific outlets, and probably the contacts that you've already been working with that have already been picking up your stories, that you already have those relationships with, launching, new rebranded, this is my social enterprise, or this is my advocacy group, this is what it's called, and this is what it's going to do moving forward, and this is what it did historically. So always taking a nod to the efforts that you've already done. Does anybody else have something that they want to share in terms of like a news story that might be pertinent to your business?
So so my business is a vegan hair care line for Black consumers. And I have a friend, she actually works in media. She is a freelance writer. She also is a speaker and educator. She is on the social all the time and City Line. And she also used to, when we were able to go outside and hold events, she would, her and a partner would have a natural hair event that they would host. And so she's somebody that I am planning to tap into heavily for when my product goes to launch. She has a pretty decent following, and because of her, what she does, she has access to a lot of media platforms and that way. So I'm looking at really leveraging that relationship in an extreme way. And she's somebody, because we've been friends for a long time, she's originally from London. She's always like, that support's naturally always been there between us for each other. So I'm really looking forward to how she'll be able to play a role in things going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a huge connection to have, right? Somebody that has that platform, that can leverage that platform, and somebody that you have that personal connection with. They've become like an extension of your brand, right? They're like, they might not be an official ambassador, but they become an ambassador of your business. And having individuals like that sort of in your network, they create so much legitimacy around your business. It's not just, this is my business that, I started yesterday and I thought of the idea 2 days ago. It really solidifies that you're a player in that space when you have that type of connection and you can leverage it. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
That's great. Does anybody else have sort of a story that they want to share about their business, or that you think would be sort of what you're thinking about as a press release, and who you might try to target that to?
Well, we were thinking about actually places like Fanshawe and Western, like where we're alumni, in terms of just what we're doing afterwards. Like, those like alumni magazines and stuff. Like, I think a lot of that would be our target customer, like in the London area. So yeah, that's sort of one thing we've been thinking about.
Yeah, that's absolutely great. Think about those networks that you're already a part of that can amplify your voice. So like the alumni magazines, they want to tell the story of, successful graduates. They want to check in with what you're doing, and they want to, promote that to other graduates or students. So that's wonderful. One of the really unique things is you guys are all part of this Leap In cohort. That's an interesting story to tell. Maybe it's not the focus of your press release, but that's absolutely something that you might want to include. Like Evity, if you're, sort of relaunching your idea, you can talk about coming through this process, or connecting, as a graduate of the Leap In 2021 summer cohort, I've relaunched my business as, this thing. So there's lots of, you've got to think about what your unique story is. And I really liked how Matt talked about that talent stack, but you can also think about that in terms of like stories, like what's the talent stack of your story? What is your story highlighting? It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be the most innovative company. Nobody here is, going to necessarily like, you'll see it in sort of the press release, but you're not Elon Musk. You're not, revolutionizing the way that we, I don't know, live and travel on Mars or whatever it may be. So it's about finding that thing that you're doing really well and finding that combination of things that you're doing really well and packaging that in a way that your reader or, a media outlet's gonna be like, oh, that's really interesting. This is a really cool story. People are gonna love this. Let's get this out, tomorrow or this week. That's great. So that's wonderful. Thank you guys for taking some time to think about that. What I wanted to do right now is kind of pull up, I just want to pull up some examples of what a media release looks like and then a template. And I'm not sure how we're doing for time, Dave. So maybe you can tell me if we're still good. Okay. So let me just share my screen and I'm going to pull up an example of a media release that I sort of co-wrote just to give you an idea of what it looks like if you haven't seen one before. Okay, so just give me a thumbs up when you can see this. Can you guys see the Word document? Yep. Okay, great. So in terms of what it looks like, I know I talked about the components and I will shoot a template into the chat for you so you can almost sort of plug in your own information and go. But essentially what you want to do is you want to have your logo somewhere up at the top. This was obviously coming around the time the Fanshawe 50. You title it, it's a media release so that the media knows what it is. Again, that's sort of important when it's between like a media release or media advisory. When the media see a media release, they understand exactly what you're sending. A media advisory is very different. So you want to make sure that you're using the proper formatting and the proper title. One of the other things that you want to kind of look at is you see this little note that says for immediate distribution. So you might have a story that you've crafted a press release before, but you haven't made the announcement yet, and you don't want it to end up in the media until at least next week. So make sure you include those dates if you don't want it to be released immediately. For immediate distribution, it essentially says to a journalist, I can run with this right now and I can get working on this story if I find it meritorious or if I want to publish this. The next thing you want to do is obviously have your date, and then you want to get into the sort of components of your media release. So having that catchy title, in this case, it was Fanshawe College earns top tier national research ranking. It's not a ton of information, but it's something that should sort of hook the reader in a little bit saying, okay, that's really interesting. What does that mean? Like Fanshawe's top tier in what research? What does that mean? Your second subheading gives a little bit more context to where this information is coming from. So Canadian college research income leaps by 20% in 1 year. That gives a little bit of context to the viewer saying, okay, they've reached this top national research ranking. It was because they, increased their research income. Now let's read through and see what that means. This is something that you'll see in all media releases is wherever you're geographically located, you'll put sort of the city and the province or the country or whatever it is for your particular situation. Then you want to dive right into that, what is this news and why is it important? So the essential crux of this first sentence, and I'm not going to read through all of this. I just want to, kind of bring your attention to a few key a few key areas so that you can think about what this might look like for you. So Fanshawe College is delivering a 1-2 winning punch across the country today as it leads the way with applied research. According to Research InfoSource, which just released its annual rankings of Canada's top 50 research colleges, Fanshawe is #1 for research growth and #2 for research income. So this is kind of hitting on a lot of pertinent information. It's supposed to be a little catchy. Again, you just want to kind of hook the reader in a little bit. And it's also providing context that this story is coming actually from a broader story about research rankings and how Fanshawe sort of fits into that. Getting into the body, this is a lot of information and there's lots of figures and numbers, and it's being pulled from the overall news that was released. Yours is not going to look exactly like this, but some things that I want you to kind of take a look at are, you notice here that there are some quotes that are weaved right into the press release. What a journalist will typically do, they will write up their article, they will look through and they will pull the quotes out and include the quotes in their article. You don't have to have them, you know, in the narrative section of your press release. You can have you can have a section that says quotes and has 3 or 4 quotes from you as the business owner, or from, you know, somebody that, you know, it makes sense to have quoted based on the information that you're including. But some people like to include them right in the body. So you'll want to have that information there. This provides just a little bit more context overall. And then you'll see, for complete information on the rankings, visit researchinfosource.com. Because this news story was pulled from a larger news story, just linking it back to that original content. And then for further information, this would be typically your name, whether, you know, you want them to contact you by phone or email, whether it's press or media at whatever, or it's just your business email, that's totally fine. And then you want to have, this is sort of the boilerplate. This is that high level information about your company. So, you know, Fanshawe is one of Ontario's largest colleges, whatever that is for your business. So if it's, you know, started in 2020, you know, name of business is a novel approach to whatever. This can be pulled right from those high level statements that you've been making. I believe it's for social media. You can pull this information right from there and use some form of that. And this will be consistent across all of your press releases. You'll want to make sure that your boilerplate is fairly consistent. So that's what one looks like if you've never seen one before. Seeing it now, you might say, oh, I've seen those before. I've seen them pop up on social media. I've seen them, you know, pop up on people's websites. They're very, very easy to do once you kind of understand the format. So what I wanted to do is I just want to pull up a template. I'm going to toss it in the chat actually as well, just because I made it its own thing. Okay. Sorry, guys, this will just take me a minute to find. Press release template. Okay, so I believe this is one. Network disconnect. I don't know why it's not wanting to send. Okay, maybe I'm just I'll pull it up and then I'll, so that we can look at it together. Okay, it just keeps saying network disconnect. I don't know what that means. Okay.
You want to email it to me, Steph? I could try.
Yeah, let's do that real quick. Just so that you guys can have a copy, and then maybe you can start, you know, filling it in for yourself while we're here. Okay, let me send that. Okay. All right, Kelsey, I just send that to you and I will pull it up on my screen, and then hopefully you can toss that in the chat while we're, oh, what am I doing? Share screen. Okay. And just to kind of echo what Matt had talked about, you know, with being responsive to reporters. I had a reporter, you know, we sent something out that morning. They called us that day and said, hey, can you get to St. Thomas by this time? We want to do an interview with you. You know, at the story was about the St. Thomas market. They wanted to do an interview at the St. Thomas market. I, of course, was wearing my work clothes. I looked awful. My hair wasn't done. My makeup was all a mess. And I showed up looking like whatever, just to make sure that we could get the news story. So it's one of those things that you never realize how quickly or how slowly it can go. So always be prepared. Okay, so can somebody just give me a thumbs up when you can see this? Great, thanks, Kelsey. Okay, so I believe this is in sort of the package of documents that's available on your FOL, because that's actually where I pulled it from. It's just a simple press release template from HubSpot, I think I'm saying that right. So essentially, you've got sort of all the information for immediate release. You can have the date associated, making sure you have your company logo, contact name, all that information. But if you actually go through this document, it's really, really prescriptive in terms of what gets included in each section. It really simplifies this. Again, you don't need to be a PR professional to write a really strong press release. You just need to make sure that you're following the template, providing the information that's needed. It's really the more accessible you can make your information, that's going to be the determinant factor for most outlets on whether they're going to run your story, especially for those outlets that need to have, 3 or 4 stories a day. A lot of those companies that aggregate news. So you can really make sure that your story gets picked up, and you don't have to, pay a PR firm. You don't have to have this knowledge in-house. You can just sort of follow the resources that are available to you. So of course, maybe what we can do is, were you able to drop that in the chat, Kelsey?
I was. Did it go through?
Yeah, I think so. I see it now. Okay. So what I was hoping that each of you could do, and you don't have to, but if you wanted to open up that document, and if you wanted to start thinking about what information you might include in a press release, I know a few of you have already kind of talked about what your angle would be, is start to maybe jot in and fill in some of that information. You don't necessarily have to sort of write it out in full sentences, but add some basic sort of some points. So for example, if I were thinking about writing a story, let's say about this cohort of, Leap Junction businesses that are launching into the ecosystem, what a great story you could write and definitely get picked up by lots of outlets. And I'm actually sure that Kelsey and Dave, you've probably put out press releases before about your, your event, your end of year event, or about your entrepreneurs, and it's been picked up. I'm sure I've seen those out in the media. So that's definitely a news story that's worth telling. So let's think maybe as a bit of a group, and I want you to think about this within your own context as well. So, what's the announcement? What's so interesting about this group? So for me, I would start with the basics, right? So I would say, new businesses are launching into London, entrepreneurial, and pardon me because my spelling is atrocious, ecosystem, and there's nothing like typing in front of people to really highlight that. So new businesses launching into the London ecosystem, cohort of 12 is just some more information. And I might want to, pepper in a few little bits of information about sort of what the angle of this is. Is it that, you're launching new businesses? Is that Fanshawe is supporting an entrepreneurial ecosystem within London? It's really about identifying that value proposition is supporting entrepreneurial businesses. And if you can sort of think about your business and what that might be, just jot that down. You can create this as a template and something that you can refine moving forward. So the second paragraph, there's lots of great information in here. It's the best spot for quotes, choosing your quotes carefully. You want to make sure that your quotes are associated with your story, of course. Make sure they're specific. One of the biggest pitfalls I see with press releases is that the quotes are very generic, like so-and-so is really excited about this new initiative. That's a very generic, wonderful statement, but let's get a little bit deeper. This initiative is going to bring, over, thousands of dollars and new economic opportunities for the London area. So that's could be a quote from potentially yourself as the business owner or from a collaborator that you're working with. So there's lots of stuff that you can include in here. And so one of the things that I was kind of saying, having your CEO say that your product is the next best thing to a rocket ship is typically a very bad idea unless you're Elon Musk. So you don't want to get into the habit of using some of these. There's some sort of terminology that gets overused in PR, and those are things like leading edge, innovative, game changing. Those are things that get used so often in the media world that they've sort of lost their punch and they've lost their meaning. So if you can talk about your business and you can use specifics like why is your product innovative versus, my product is innovative, get specific, really provide that information to set yourself apart. So, and this is kind of this little thing here. In the third paragraph, it's often tempting to add fluff that doesn't need to be there. It's also extremely tempting to bleed over to a second page by bolstering the third paragraph. This is where you don't need to, add that, supporting characters and history. If you can hit on a few couple of points about, why what you're doing is a complement to what you've been doing before, or how it, aligns with your company mission or your strategic initiatives, absolutely include that. But really try to prevent yourself from adding that flowery language that really doesn't tell anybody. And you've all read articles like that where you think half of this could have been cut out and I really would have understood exactly what they were saying. So make sure that you're as succinct as possible. You can also include some, little, information here, like, for example, let's say this is Leap In's. How many cohorts is this for you guys? What is this? Your
5.
Leap In's fifth year. So that's information that would be really interested. How many people have you had that have gone through this? Oh, 6th year?
5th year. There have been, quick math. This will be, there's 54 of them now.
54 clients moved through the summer incubator.
Yep.
So this is where, again, you include some like interesting information about your stuff. And obviously this is just sort of quick and dirty. Let's get some info on the page, but think about that within the context of your business. What is that information that you'd want to tell? Is this a business that you've been working on for years? And, this is your first rebrand. Is this, how many people have you worked with? How many causes have you advocated for? How many products have you developed? Whatever that is, get that in there so that, a reader can quickly pull that information out. And then of course you want to have your little about your company. And this is something that should be very easy. Just copy and paste it, plunk it in, and make sure that's there. And then you can include your contact below this piece here. So I'm going to say I'm a bad PR person because I cannot for the life of me remember why it typically is 30 at the end, but that's what all sort of press releases have at the end. And I know there's a reason, but I can't remember off the top of my head. And if anybody knows, you can absolutely throw that in the chat, but there's a specific format and you'll see them online and you can typically follow them. So I hope that you're starting to get a sense of how you might build something like this for your business and how it can be valuable and how it can be a resource that helps get your name out there. I know we saw all the wonderful outcomes from Matt's work. He was picked up by numerous media outlets. He's had interviews that he's put out there. He's gotten so much coverage without spending a single dollar. And this is something you can all do for your business. Every single one of you has the capacity to put out a news story and have it be picked up. I'm assuming some of you have already been picked up. You've already connected with media. I know, Evity, you mentioned that you've already, been in contact with different outlets and you've had news stories about what you're doing. So this is not something that you have to be a marketing specialist to succeed in. So that's everything in a nutshell. I don't think I had any more, just sort of a thank you slide. So I can end it there and open it up for any questions if you guys have any.
Floor is yours, guys, for questions.
I had
talking a bunch today.
I had a comment. I really liked this presentation, especially because sometimes people think it's hard, like that you have to pay for media coverage or for awareness. And I liked what the first presentation was saying about when it comes to awareness, don't pay for that, especially nowadays. And so being able to put everything, even though I was getting all of these things, I didn't know what I was doing right. So when I didn't get stories posted, I'd get upset because I didn't know what I was doing wrong either. And so being able to put all of that together in what are they actually looking for, who do you get in contact, how to be strategic about it, really helps me to level up my PR game. So thank you.
That's great. And I want to say it's a learning process. Like I went to school for PR, and for probably the first 3 years of my career at Fanshawe, I was really working a lot with promotions, and there were a lot of things that I learned along the way too. I would put out media releases and I didn't have that package of documents ready to go for journalists. And so sometimes what I would see happening is we would put out a release and then we'd see the article and there'd be some generic stock photo that they use to highlight. And that was a learning opportunity for me, saying, hey, we have so much high quality photography. Why didn't I, create an easy to use link and make sure that that was available within my media release or within the email that I was connecting with that individual for, saying, hey, grab whatever you need. So yeah, it's really, or old logos. Yeah, it's a constant learning process, and you're going to constantly refine your process. And one of the things you want to do is you want to sort of check in, like give yourself, whether it's a 6-month check-in, check in your press kit, see what needs updating. Are your photos old? Do you need to kind of redo them a little bit? You want to make sure that you have fresh content. So if you're somebody that wants to get picked up by the media a lot and you're going to be putting out frequent stories, make sure that what you have there is new and novel. So you're not sending out the same pictures, that you're not seeing the same things over and over again if you're trying to tell a different story. So make some time to check in with yourself. Again, it's you don't want to create too much work. You don't want to say every week I'm going to go through and make sure everything is, the newest new. Set, 6 months or every year, check in and maybe update your content. And then think about your strategy. You should be doing that anyway with your marketing strategy, checking in, seeing what's working and maybe revising it for the next year or the next quarter or however you want to do that. But make sure that your assets are a part of that check-in as well. And keep your logo, your original files of your logos. Please, please keep them. You don't want to have to pay a graphic designer to remake it so you have a file that you can send out that's quality.
I had a question about like the title. Like, should we be using like trendy, like I'm using air quotes, but you can't see, but like trendy like words, or to be like more catchy to the media, or no?
Yeah, I think if you're comfortable with that, you can absolutely play up on trends, or using puns, or if there's certain catchy turns of phrase. You still want your title to kind of let the reader know what's the newsworthy aspect of what you're sending out. But if you can if you can capture it in a way that's kind of fun and catchy, then yeah, absolutely. What I would say is like, don't sacrifice the content for the catchiness. That's kind of the road that you'll want to walk. But absolutely, yeah, as long as it's appropriate, I would say go for it.
Okay, perfect. And then I had another question about, like, you had said like having a page on your website for them to like go get content. And would it be appropriate to like give them a passcode to get into it, so it's not for the public but only for people with passcodes?
Yeah, absolutely. If you can set that up in a way that you think is not going to compromise the way your website looks, if you want to have all that information for media inquiries here, and then when you send out your press release, you say, here's a link to my website where everything is, here's the passcode, that's totally fine too. At that point, it's probably just as easy to like email them a downloadable link or attach all that information to an email and say, here are samples of, tweets that you could send out. Here are samples of, photography you can use. But it's really up to you, whatever is going to make it easiest for you to manage. You just don't want to create more work for yourself is kind of my rule of thumb.
Okay. One more question. Would it be appropriate to send out a zip file with those documents? Yeah. Okay.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that would be totally fine. Again, it's whatever is easiest for you, and will be easy for the person to retrieve on the other end. Zip files are totally fine. Even WeLinks, I know, I think you guys send them out for recordings and stuff. So, you could just send out a WeLink that they can have for 7 days or however long the free subscription allows you to get that content. So, yep.
Okay, I have one more question.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know I said the last one was the last one. But with regards to like formatting for images and stuff, like, is PNGs for logos fine, or would it be better to have like a vector file? Like, I want to make it as easy as possible for them to take that image and plaster it everywhere, hopefully.
Yeah, I would say the more formats you can have it in, the better, because sometimes it's up to the end user what they're most comfortable for. I know PNGs are pretty good because they typically don't. You can easily modify them in terms of making sure that they have a transparent background. You don't need to have sort of special software on your computer to open them. So if you have them in a couple different modes, that's totally fine. But I would say PNG is completely acceptable, as long as, there's no issues with the loss of quality, which typically there aren't. But I'm not overly knowledgeable about file formats. So if there's somebody else on this call that's a little more knowledgeable, that's fine as well. But any vector formatting, what you don't want to send is like working files, because typically most people can't open those unless they have, and you don't want them to have your working files anyway. But even JPEGs are fine as long as it's a really high quality, file that you're sending.
As another question I had, unless anybody else has another question, but with regards to like photography, so we're photography, videography, and live broadcasting, and we like when in college, like they were taught, like we always provide like the highest quality, but I know for web usage, that sometimes isn't the best thing to provide them because it slows down their servers and whatnot. I'm just wondering, like, because I always save my documents in 300 like PI, and I'm just wondering, like, should I be like making those smaller for clients and for myself, or what should
I think I mean, what I see for most places, they will have like a web logo and a print logo. So you can definitely segment it out and use sort of the best practices in the industry at the time, which is the 300 for your web logo and whatever it is for your print logo. So having two different versions is totally great. And if you're providing that service for your clients, then I would say, yeah, give them a web version. A web version of their logo and sort of a print version for their logo, because they also have to be in different colors too, right? I can't remember, is it the print logo has to be CYA, no, that's fine, CYMK, and then for your web you want the RGB, right?
Yeah.
And Jenny's got some great information in there as well, in terms of what you want to make sure your specs are, if you are the one creating your logo or if you are creating logos for others.
I was thinking more around like portrait, like if they had like portraiture and like executive portraits for like web release. So no, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would do the same thing for portraits. I know even when I got my wedding photos, they gave us sort of like, these are your mobile/web photos. These are the ones that you'll use for printing. They gave us two sort of packages so that we could have them for different usages if we wanted to post them on social media or on our I don't know, our website or something like that, but versus printing out like a high quality thing. So yeah, I would do the same thing as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? This is great. I mean, I haven't talked about PR. It's been a while. It's not something I touch on a day-to-day basis anymore, but it's really fun to dive back into it and to remember all the tactics and all the cool things you can do. And it was really interesting to hear Matt's sort of, again, seeing what Matt has done with his own businesses and how he's really leveraged that free opportunity to get your news out there.
Thank you so much, Steph. This was ended up being way more well-rounded than what we would have had. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this kind of last minute for us and putting together all these valuable resources. So I just want to give you a nice round of applause. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
We really do appreciate it.
Oh, I love doing it. I love chatting about it. I love connecting with you guys, and it's fun to dip your feet back into that pool.
I hope you don't mind. I put your Fanshawe email address under your bio there. So it is on FOL. So if you guys do have more questions, want to talk to Steph, you know how to get in touch with her as well. I don't know if you weren't paying attention to the chat, I put a couple zip folders in there. They're the resources that Stephanie talked about. And then some additional ones from a program called Growth Wheel. A lot of it's just templates and other documents you'll find helpful as you're kind of creating your own fully kind of rounded press kit in the future. But all that stuff's on FOL as well as Stephanie's presentation too. So.
And I'm happy to meet with anybody if you ever want to, chat PR, or you want to like run some tactics or ideas or how to put a press kit together. If you want to meet over Zoom, just send me an email. I'm happy to support as needed. Again, just another potential resource if you're interested.
Thank you again so much, Stephanie. Appreciate it. Well, I don't have anything else for everybody today. Kelsey, Jenny, anything else that you guys want to add?
No, I think it's been a great day. I agree, Dave, that it's been a little more well-rounded than I think we had planned. A pleasant surprise for us when our in-house staff end up coming out and blowing us away with all this knowledge. We've worked with Steph for a while, and I mean, I didn't even know she was such a wealth of knowledge. So now she's going to have to deal with all of my incessant questions for the rest of our working relationship. So yay! Thank you, Steph. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Anything else, Jenny?
No, Kelsey took the words right out of my mouth. Steph's presentation brought me back to my school days. So I think you condensed an entire semester in that presentation. So very impressive.
She's very talented.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Steph. And for those of you who, I know Ashley said that you wanted to stick around and ask a couple questions. As always, we will stick around for a little while to help out with anything that you might have. But otherwise, if there is no more questions from the group, you are free to go on your way, and we will see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock for our session with Isaac and Jose around sales and CRMs. Have a great evening, everybody. Take care. Hi, Ashley.
You're still recording, Dave.
Hi.
Okay, bye.